Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was left dead by his village and returned as the Conqueror of the Seas Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Forest between Wave Country and Conqueror. A group of 4 individuals were currently jumping from tree to tree, at a relatively high speed on the road between Fire and Wave countries. It had already been 3 days ever since their mission had started, and they were quite close to their destination now. Anko cursed silently in her head as she looked around and then at her teammates for this mission. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, had deemed that a spying mission in Kiri was necessary, in order to make sure of their intentions in the upcoming war between the Leaf and its enemies. This was undoubtedly an S-ranked mission, since they were infiltrating the Bloody Mist and had for only orders to see but not be seen. This should have been a Jonin and higher level only mission. However, strangely enough, Anko was the only Jonin in her team. She had been assigned with a team of 3 freshly promoted Chunin, the former Team 9. Even so, this still could have worked, since they were all trained by Guy, Konoha's taijutsu specialist. There was no doubt about their skills as shinobi. No, there was something else that was bugging Anko. What really made her blood boil was the reason behind this team selection. They were all expendable, her included. Anko knew the village never really forgave her for her former master's betrayal. Orochimaru of the Sannin left them more than 20 years ago, but it still affected her, just as his damn curse seal. The mark was still there, just to remind her that she too was one of those he experimented on. Next were her team members, Team 9. Contrary to all the other teams of rookies that recently graduated from Genin level, none of them were children of council members or heir and heiress of a noble clan of Konoha. Lee and Tenten were orphans, while Niji was a member of the branch side of the Hyuga clan. With the exception of Anko, the village was not willing to lose any more Jonin than needed and sent out a team of expendable Chunin with the Snake Mistress. Anko tried to remember how things turned out this way, the current state of the village or the war. Thinking about it, she knew everything changed after the disappearance of Uzumaki Naruto, 15 years ago. Everybody knew he was dead, but since there was no body, he was only declared MIA. The Sandaime changed after that. Seeing the villagers cheer for the death of the little boy was too much for him, and after 5 years, he simply decided to step down from his position again, and this time for good, since he left the village the very next day after announcing his retirement. Hiruzen left 3 possible candidates' names for his successor, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Kakashi, but to everyone's surprise, none of them seemed really enthusiastic to take the job, and Shimura Danzo, an older shinobi from the same generation as Hiruzen, was chosen as the next Hokage. It was from that point on, and for the last 10 years, that the situation worsened between the Leaf and the external world. If Hiruzen was a peaceful and gentle type of leader, Danzo was quite the opposite. The man only believed in strength and deemed emotions as utterly useless. As such, and with the cooperation of the council, Konoha was militarized to the extreme. Firstly with the mandatory conscription of every children in the Ninja Academy program, and then every resources or budgets were devoted to the improvement of his army. This, of course, could not remain unseen for too long from the other villages, and soon the diplomatic relationships with them became tensed. Iwa and Kumo never really had great relations with Konoha, and Kiri was still in the middle of a civil war. How Suna still remained an ally is a mystery, but they did. One man, though, took advantage of the situation, Orochimaru. He used the distrust generated by Konoha to rally a coalition of Odo, his own village, Kumo, and Iwa in order to destroy the Leaf. This is how the elemental nations were now on the brink of witnessing the 4th Great Shinobi War. Even though Oto, Orochimaru's newly built village, was still a mystery and Kiri was off the grid, it was basically 4 of the great 5 villages in a 2 versus 2 confrontation with a slight advantage for Orochimaru's side. Anko was pulled out of her thoughts by the sudden change in the scenery, with the appearance of the sea. They were finally in Wave Country, and the tough part of their mission was about to start. From there on, their team needed to board a ship and make their way to Water Country in order to investigate how Kiri would position themselves in the war. There was no doubt in Danzo's mind that Kiri would one way or the other participate in the war. His paranoiac mind needed to know to whom their allegiance went to. If they were on his side, they needed to formalize an alliances treaty as soon as possible, otherwise they needed to be destroyed. For this recon mission, Anko's team couldn't afford to be recognized as ninja hailing from Konoha, so they all disguised themselves as civilians before entering the small town that was near the sea. Wave Village. Anko and the disguised Team 9 entered the small village near the coast in order to find a boat for Water Country. She couldn't believe the convincing and time it took, in order to have Lee change from his green bodysuit. The young man would not wear anything else, and Anko could not really blame him for his obsession, since she too had a thing for provocative clothes, but a mission is a mission, even more so with the fate of their village at stake. The first thing they noticed upon entering that small town was how beautiful and lively it seemed to be. Shops were flourishing with goods from the highest quality, as Tenten could attest from the way she looked at the weapons displayed in the armory. The design from the sword she was currently holding in her hands was quite impressive and something she never saw. It was a very long sword, most likely to be held using 2 hands judging by its weight. Seeing no forge in the neighborhood, she was curious as to where this kind of sword came from. "Excuse me, sir, I've never seen this type of sword before. Where did it come from?" Tenten asked the salesman. "This one came from one of the merchant ship that stops here once a month. How about it? I got it for a good price and I would be delighted to sell it to you, miss," the man replied. "Thanks, but it's far too heavy for me. I was just looking around," Tenten said before leaving the shop. The others also went to look around. They had to meet with Enko at the docks in 20 minutes. Lee and Niji also experienced the same thing as Tenten. As they went to buy food for their trip, they were presented with very diverse and nice products. There were fruits and spice they never encountered before, and upon asking where they came from, it was always the same question: from the sea. Another thing that surprised them was the pricing. Everything was so cheap in comparison to what they were used to pay for in Konoha. With the war and the deterioration of the relationship with the other countries, the living conditions in the Leaf had been quite hard lately. When the team went to the docks for their meeting with Enko, they were only half surprised to see the purple-haired Jonin holding with her some exotic-looking bottles of sake. She most likely had the time to visit as well and spend some money on the products that were displayed in the shops. "Alright, I found a ship for water country, here are your tickets. It leaves in the morning, so we'll be sleeping here tonight. Let's go find rooms at a local inn for the night," Enko said as she left in the direction of the town. Tsunami's Inn. They chose an inn that was close enough from the docks but not too close from the town center, in order to remain as discreet as possible. Upon entering the inn, they were greeted by a woman named Tsunami. There were also other tourists than them, but not as much as in the other inns. They took 2 rooms with Lee and Niji sharing one, while Enko and Tenten took the other one. It was almost time for dinner, so they were invited to join Tsunami in the dining room downstairs. "Tsunami-san, I couldn't help but notice the state of your lovely town. I always thought this part of the elemental nations to be very poor, but from what I've seen since we came here, it's far from the truth, so I was wondering if you could tell me more about it," Tenten asked Tsunami. "Well, this town has not always been like this. Going backward 1 year ago, we were still like what you originally thought we were, a very poor town with no business nor any touristic activities. There was also this man, Gato, who was employing bandits and had been stealing all of our money and business for years. No one dared to oppose him. I even lost my husband because of him," Tsunami started to say, but she had to take a break at this point since it was quite a bad memory for her. This all changed on that one day, though. Out of nowhere, a large ship in very bad shape boarded our docks for repairs and supplies. Judging by their clothes and appearance, they all looked like foreigners, and some of them even spoke a weird language between themselves. Their leader was a man whose name I still don't know to this day since he didn't say it. He also wore a mask, so even if he was famous or something, there was no way for us to know. He was the one who spoke to my father, this town's mayor. They apparently came here straight from after a battle on the seas and had no way to pay us for the supplies they were asking for. He promised that in exchange for our help he would come back later and pay us for 10 times the amount of what he was asking us for. We have a tradition here to always help those who need our help, so even without the promise we would have helped them to the best of our abilities. They left 3 days after their arrival, with the little we could afford to spare them from our own limited supplies." Tsunami continued, but was interrupted at this point by Enko. "Didn't they wear anything that could identify them as shinobi from a village, like a headband or some mark on their clothes?" she asked, wanting to know more about those mysterious travelers. Tsunami thought about it for a second and then simply shook her head before she moved on with her story. By the end of the same week, when Gato came in town in order to take his cut from all of our sales and benefits, he saw that a part of our stock was missing and that no payment had been done for them. When we told him what we did for the foreigners that came earlier, he first laughed at us, saying how stupid we were to have trusted some unknown foreigners. Then, to set an example, he decided to punish us by executing the one who was in charge at the time, my father. Everyone was so scared of him that no one dared to oppose him. I was too scared for my son that I had to look him take away my father." Tsunami took another break. Her fear of losing Inari, her son, was still fresh in her mind. "We were all assembled in front of the town hall to witness the execution with no exception. Child, men and women of all age were to see what happens to those who defy Gato. One of his men was about to cut my father's head off when it happened. I couldn't bear to see him kill my father, and closed my eyes for only 1 second. When I reopened my eyes it was all over. However, instead of my father, it was Gato and all of his men that were dead. I don't know when, how or what he did, but the man who came by earlier with his ship was back. His companions were back too. They took out all the mercenaries that Gato employed while their leader was dealing with him. Tsunami stopped again, but this time she smiled. From that point on, our village slowly but surely became what you see of it today. The man came back, and as promised, he brought back with him at least 10 times the amount of what he borrowed from us. He introduced us to many people as business partners, and a ship like his has been coming here every month with new products and merchants for us to trade with. My father is currently on board of one of those ships with my son in order to visit another town like ours and open new trade relationships for our village. Tsunami said as she finished her tale, still smiling. The Konohanins and the tourists that were also listening to Tsunami were deeply surprised by the story of this town. Enko couldn't help but think that it was all too good to be true, but according to Tsunami, the mysterious man didn't even ask for a cut of the profits generated by his intervention. The variety and abundance of the goods he brought here showed that those ships traveled quite a bit. Enko was in no way an expert in trades, but from what she could see, the sake she bought came from at least 3 distinct parts of the elemental nations that were on the opposite side of the continent. It was getting late and they had to leave the town early in the morning, so Enko decided to call it a night and sent her team to their rooms. She doubted that they would come across that unknown masked character, but left it in a corner of her mind. For better or for worse, this man was definitely someone her superiors would like to meet. On the boat for Water Country. Team Enko left Wave Village early on the next morning as scheduled. They took a boat for Water Country in order to infiltrate and assess Kirigaku's situation and their intentions about the war. They were on a touristic boat, with lots of civilians and only a few ninja to defend the ship. Judging by their clothes and headband, they were from Kiri, Chunin level at best, but Enko knew better than to underestimate strangers, so she ordered her team to remain as discreet as possible and to not draw attention to themselves. The trip would take at least 3 days at their current speed, and the snake mistress was already bored out of her mind. She decided to enjoy some of the sake she bought in Wave while the rest of her team was simply resting in their cabins to avoid making unnecessary contact with the ninja that were guarding the ship. The only distraction so far was to see the ever-hyperactive Rock Lee being seasick, and even that quickly became boring to watch as well. On the second day of their trip, the ship suddenly stopped in the middle of nowhere. Curious as to why it stopped, Enko and her team, minus Lee, decided to go check the situation on deck. As they arrived, they saw chaos and people running around. Flanking their ship was another ship with a pirate flag. Their men were already boarding the ship and had neutralized the shinobi that were responsible for the crew's safety. Enko cursed as she knew they couldn't use their shinobi skills. They were way too close to Kiri to reveal themselves as ninja right now. The Kiri nins that were supposed to watch the ship were now useless but still conscious, and there was no way they wouldn't notice Enko and her team taking out the pirates. She knew they had no choice but to let it play as if they were mere civilians, at the mercy of these pirates. Those scums were usually only interested in stealing the ship's gold and cargo, so if they were lucky, they would just lose some money and a bit of their pride, but that would be it, and they would be able to resume their mission. True to her prediction, the pirates went to steal the ship's cargo as soon as they assembled all the passengers on the deck and restrained them. However, Enko gritted her teeth when one of the pirates saw a beautiful young woman among the passengers and tried to take her with him. This was also among the things that happened during those pirates' attack. They also kidnapped young women. Enko and her team had used henge in order to hide their true face, so both her and Tenten looked average to untrained eyes, but this young civilian woman was not that lucky. The man was about to bring the unfortunate girl with him on the pirate ship when a violent gust of wind shook both ships. Pirates, shinobi and civilians alike had to close or shield their eyes until the wind died down. When everyone reopened their eyes, they were greeted by the appearance of 2 new women on the civilian ship. One was sitting on top of the mast while the second one was standing near the edge of the ship's bow. Both women wore matching clothes, a tight black leather top, a black miniskirt with stockings, and finally over their shoulders, a gray haori with a black fox printed on it. Oh, it seems we didn't get all the passengers. We forgot those 2 lovely ladies. Go get them. They will make a fine addition to my collection. The pirate's captain yelled at his men, who were more than happy to follow their orders. They were making their way to the 2 women when the one on top of the mast spoke. How rude of you, only one man has the right to touch me, she said as she lifted one hand towards the pirate ship. The wind then immediately picked up again and tore its sail to shreds, effectively immobilizing it. You speak too much, Sambantai Taicho. You came here on your own again without waiting for our Sancho and the others, the second woman said as she unsheathed her katana, and with a swing so fast for anyone to follow her movement, she sheathed her blade back. A mere second later, a loud cracking noise was heard over the pirate ship as it was suddenly split into 2 parts, with a clean cut right in the middle of it. Arara, it seems you're in a bad mood today, Ichiban Taicho. You want some sake to calm your nerves? The one on the mast replied while gulping down a sake bottle she took out of nowhere. The pirate's captain and his men who were still on the civilian ship were furious and about to charge at the two mysterious women when something they couldn't understand happened to them. "What did you do to me? I can't move my body," the man said as he was stopped in a running position. It seems our Sancho and the others have arrived. I guess the fun part is over, well for me anyway," the one on the mast said before she jumped down and went to stand beside her partner. Just as she went down, from out of nowhere and without making a single sound, came out a giant ship. It was easily 4 times bigger than the civilian or pirate ship. On its deck, Anko saw 2 more women who once again wore matching clothes, different from the first 2 who were already on the civilian ship with them though. There was also the man who seemed to match Tsunami's description of the savior from their village. The 2 women on board the bigger ship wore a black 2-piece suit with several pieces of plate armor as shin-high, slightly heeled metal boots, large wrist guards, shoulder pieces and a partial skirt. Finally, they also had a short black cape. One part of their equipment immediately caught Tenten's eyes, the very large swords they both had on their back. Contrary to the more traditional katana, the first 2 were wielding those looked like the swords she saw at the weapons shop in the village back in Wave Country. Well, what do we have here?" the man said as he gazed around the ship's deck. The only features that could be seen were his blonde hair and deep blue eyes that seemed vaguely similar to someone Anko already met in the past but could not remember who or when. Water country 200 miles away from the main island. Mizu no Kuni is a nation exclusively composed by a small number of islands. Their hidden village, Kirigakure, also known as the Bloody Mist, is located on the main and biggest island. Until recently, Kiri was still in a civil war that started years ago. The 2 sides fighting in this war were the rebels, wielders of Kekkei Genkai, and their mortal enemies, the Loyalists, who followed the previous Kage in his quest to purge the world from the bloodline holders. The rebels were thought to be losing this war, since no other major village was willing to support them. However, they miraculously prevailed and a new Mizukage was elected. Kiri is still recovering from years of war and privations. The living conditions, under the rule of the previous leader, had been quite difficult. Being a nation surrounded by the seas, Kirigakure does of course possess a powerful naval fleet. Nevertheless, the ocean is a vast place to look after, and they had no way to protect every part of their coasts. This was a benediction for the pirates, as they took advantage of Kiri's lack of presence to raid every ship they could. In its current fragile state, the best Kiri could afford was to dispatch some chunin on each ship to ensure the safety of the crew against those pirates. However, against heavily armed ships, there was little they could do. This led Konoha's spying mission into the situation at hand, with a pirate ship assaulting the civilian ship transporting them from Wave Country to Kiri, as they were not even 200 miles away from the main island's coasts. Anko and her team were ready to forsake the people on the ship for the success of their mission. That's the reason why they didn't lift a finger when those men were about to kidnap a young woman from the ship. They had specific orders to not reveal their presence as Leaf Ninja, and they intended on following those orders. The fate of Konoha was at stake. Fortunately or unfortunately, it all depends on one's perspective, the raid came to an end when 2 mysterious women boarded the ship. They came out of nowhere, right in the middle of the ocean, with no apparent ship of their own, and prevented the pirates from committing their crime. The first one tore the pirate's ship's sail to shreds, using a strange wind jutsu. The second one literally split the ship in 2 parts, with a quick swing of her katana. The situation was about to spiral out of control, when the pirates saw their ship getting destroyed by those 2 women, before a new ship appeared right next to theirs, again out of thin air. On the deck of that new ship appeared 3 people. Another pair of women in armored clothes and a man wearing a face mask that fit Tsunami's descriptions for their savior, gazed at the destroyed ship and the civilian one when the captain spoke. He wore a white jacket with a high collar, a white hakama with a black sash, and white sora with black tabi socks. He didn't seem to carry any weapon. "Kazuhana, you went off on your own again. A good thing that Mia is always keeping tabs on you. Now I can already see the results of your fine work against that ship, but can you both tell me how and why this came to be?" the man said to the 2 women of his crew on the civilian ship. Before any of them could answer him, the remaining pirates that weren't on their ship that Mia just sunk interfered. "So you're the captain of that ship, that's just perfect. Those 2 bitches of yours just destroyed my ship, with our entire loot along with it. We will take your ship instead, it looks good enough for me and my men. We'll take the women too, and those 2 behind you as well, as a compensation," the man said with a perverted look in his eyes. Naruto shrugged and then turned to his 2 remaining crew members as he gave them a nod. The one on his left side and then closed her silver eyes before turning her head toward the civilian ship. "The one who just spoke to us, the 2 men behind him and 3 more men in the ship's hold. All of them are barely chunin level, they must have used hostages or something like this to take over this ship," she said, opening her silver eyes again. Anko and her team were stunned, That woman just singled out every pirate that boarded the ship, even those who were hiding in the hold. However, Anko saw that she was also looking at her and her team, as if she knew they were also shinobi but chose to remain silent about it, for now at least. The second woman silently took out her large sword from her back and instantly disappeared. Only a second had passed when she reappeared on board the civilian ship. However, instead of attacking one pirate after the other, it was 3 bunshin of hers that showed up, killing off every targets at the same time, and from the shouting that could be heard from the hold, it seemed she had been there as well. Once done, she instantly moved back to her captain's side on their ship. What was that? Bunshin no jutsu? No, those illusions dealt real damages to their targets, but they instantly disappeared. It didn't felt like the Kage Bunshin nor any other elemental clones either. Could it be pure speed? Niji analyzed in his mind. Tenten for her part was fascinated by the woman's skills with her broadsword. From her memories of holding that weapon in wave, it felt far too heavy, even for a kunoichi like her, to be held with only one hand. That woman must be quite strong, and from her form she was also extremely skilled in the kenjutsu arts. She also took notice of something else though. Just as the first 2 women had a black fox on the back of their grey hiyori, the sword this woman was wielding also had a black fox carved in its blade. Contrary to Anko, none of the Leaf Chunin saw the first woman, who acted like a censor, looking at them and analyzing their reaction to her comrades' actions. Anko knew for sure they had been found out when the woman smiled at her and then turned to her captain, whispering something only they could hear. Naruto's face was still hidden to them, for if they could see under his mask, they would have seen him smirk like he had just hit the jackpot. Naruto tried to adopt a neutral tone and then spoke to the remaining people that had been assembled on the deck of the ship. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for our late arrival. We have been tasked by Kirigakure to patrol this part of the sea in order to protect ships like yours from pirates. Well, in our defense, they aren't paying us that well, and the ocean is quite a large place as well. Please allow us to escort you safely to your original destination. It shouldn't take more than a day from here to reach the main island, Naruto said. Not at all, your help is most generous, and we gladly accept your proposal. If I may ask, are you the one they call the Kuro no Kitsune? The captain of the civilian ship, a retired former Kiri Chunin, asked Naruto. PFF, the one they called Kazuhana, couldn't hold her laugh back as she heard the moniker. Naruto maintained a smiling and friendly stature while tick marks appeared on his forehead when he saw her laughing at him. Even the other 3, who appeared to be much more discreet, couldn't hide the small movements of their lips that went into a smiling motion. Ha ha, I don't really know why they did, however, I am indeed the one your people call like this, Naruto replied while scratching the back of his head. As soon as he confessed being the one called the Black Fox, the people on board the ship started to gossip among themselves. All Anko and her team could hear was hero of the war and slayer of the beast. Alright then, with you at our side, even an entire fleet of those scums wouldn't be able to scare us. This ship will be ready to set sail again in about 1 hour, the time for my men to return to their station and verify that everything is working as it should, the man said as he turned back. Ah, Captain, if I may, my ship is currently short-handed since I left some of my crew members on another ship. Would it be possible for you to spare us a small group of people? They don't need to know anything about sailing, it's really just looking after 1 or 2 things while me and the girls are busy with the rest of the technical stuff. Any civilian will do, them for example, Naruto said while pointing at the Konoha team with a tone in his voice and a spike of chakra that clearly left them the message, come with us quietly or we will reveal you and your team to those Kiri shinobi. Sure, we will go. I always wanted to visit the ship of the famous Kuro no Kitsune. However, we always travel with our entire family. My little brother is sick in his cabin. Would it be alright to bring him along with us on your ship as well? Anko immediately said, not letting the captain of her ship say a word before her. Sure, bring him along with you. Mia here is quite a skilled medic, so perhaps she could help with whatever is wrong with him, Naruto replied as he turned back to his ship, instantly followed by his 4 crewmates. On Naruto's ship. Welcome on board the Yamato, Naruto said as his guests were coming inside his ship. Lee was brought on board Naruto's ship while the other ship did its maintenance checking. Anko and her team still refrained from doing anything suspicious until they were sure the other ship was out of hearing range. For the time being they just stayed focused on the people in front of them, the memories of their skills still fresh in their minds. Naruto had disappeared inside his ship with the 2 women he came with, while the other 2 were staying on the deck with the members of Team Anko. Kazuhana took out another bottle of sake and started to drink on her own. Mia had to shake her head at her behavior but said nothing. Anko, though, was quite interested in whatever Kazuhana was drinking, so she went to sit next to her and took out her own bottle before they started to silently share some cups of each other's beverages. Kazuhana was a very beautiful woman with a dark shade of purple hair and deep black eyes. She wore light pink lipstick, Kazuhana displayed a very relaxed personality. She seemed confident in her natural sex appeal, and was not afraid to speak her mind. Mia only took a glance at Lee's condition before she knew that he was seasick. She took out some sort of pill from a box she kept in her cabin, and made him drink it with some water. The young man was then escorted to one of the guests' cabins to rest and wait for the pill to kick in. Mia was a slender yet shapely woman with fair skin and brown eyes. She had waist-length light purple hair with shorter bangs in a Heim style. She seemed like a very delicate and caring person, despite her previous action in cutting the pirate ship in 2 parts. Naruto reappeared soon enough with the 2 other women at his side. He couldn't help but chuckle when he saw Anko and Kazuhana exchanging drinks like old friends. However, they weren't here on a vacation, so he shifted into his business mode and addressed the Konoha team. Private quarters have been made ready for you and your family, miss. You can put your belongings inside and take a moment to rest before we depart from this place again. You can roam the ship as you please, with only our quarters as an exception. That's all. I'll see you and your siblings when the ship sets sail again, Naruto said as he gestured for them to follow him inside the ship. Naruto's room. The blonde laid in his bed, with his face mask off and staring at the ceiling while pondering about his encounter with the disguised Konoha team. He knew, from his sensor's report, that they were shinobi. He wasn't sure from which village they hailed from. That would be something to find out later on. He would have to be careful too, in the remote chance that they came from Konoha. He would not reveal anything relevant about himself or his wives. Information is power after all. He was pulled out of his musings by the arrivals of both Mia and Kazuhana in his room. The 2 lost no time and took off part of their clothes before they joined their husband on the bed. They snuggled on his shoulders from both sides and simply lay there with him, without saying a word. Where are the other 2? Naruto asked. They're keeping an eye on our guests, Naruto-kun, Mia replied. I see, so what did you both find out about them so far? The blonde asked again. That woman is most likely their leader. She seemed experienced in the art of information gathering, so I couldn't get anything really useful from her. I can tell from the sake she bought in Wave, and the way the younger girl has been watching our gears and swords, that it was their first time in Wave in a long time, Kazuhana replied, taking a serious tone for once. Thanks, Hana-chan. By the way, what did you show them of your powers before we joined you guys? Naruto replied. Nothing much. I made it look like your normal futon ninjutsu. Anyone from Chunin rank above with a good affinity could perform, she said with a shrug. What about you, Mia-chan? Naruto turned to the other woman on his bed. So it's not just Mia or Kazuhana anymore now? She teased him, but also knew he was serious, so she moved on with her report. Well, I only took a look at their sick member. From his body frame, I can tell he's most likely a taijutsu type, a good one at that. The girl did seem really interested in our katana. It should be safe to assume she is a kenjutsu or at least weapons specialist. The older woman, though, as Kazuhana said, is a bit hard to read. The same can be said about the final member of their team. He hasn't said a word ever since they came on the ship. Mia finished her report. Thanks, Mia-chan. About the naming thing, I have never been ashamed of having you all by my side. I just don't trust anyone besides our group. Information is power. I won't let anyone use you guys against me, Naruto said as he kissed them both on the lips. We know, Naruto-kun. I was just teasing you earlier, Mia said with a smile as he kissed her again. What about Mikuro Kitsune-sama? Kazuhana purred in his ears. I still wonder how it turned out like this. I really wanted to draw a black lion for our flags. I absolutely love those. Now everyone thinks it's a fox. You girls even took the exact same design for your clothes and weapons, so I can't possibly change it anymore. Naruto pouted as he remembered the first time his drawing was misunderstood. Furthermore, that moniker, it brought them unwanted attention from the blonde's dark past. Well, I find it really cute. If you want, I could even get a tattoo of this on any part of my body you'd like it to be, Kazuhana told him seductively. It was not meant to be cute, damn it. I wanted to instill fear among our enemies when they gaze at our flag. Fear not cute, Naruto replied. It's time to get going again. We should go back on deck and meet with the others. Mia cut their antics short as she reminded them of the schedule. Ship's deck. With the civilian side preparations over, both ships took the direction of Kirigakure once more. It would take them one day to reach their destination at their current pace. Naruto's ship kept a safe distance from the civilian one in order to maintain a bit of privacy. Lee had been cured from being seasick by whatever Mia gave him, so he joined his teammates on the ship's deck after they briefed him on what happened while he was out of it. He was especially interested in the technique the fourth woman used when she attacked the pirates, but Anko forbid him from seeking a fight with any member of Naruto's crew. When the night finally came, Naruto invited them to the ship's dining hall where Mia served them delicious food and Kazuhana offered them some really expensive sake to drink. Tenten and Niji managed to stop Lee from drinking at the last moment, saying that their brother had a condition that prevented him from enjoying alcohol. Strangely, the two women with silver eyes did not join them for dinner. When asked, Naruto told them that they already ate earlier and chose to retire themselves for the night. Enko took notice of something off in Naruto's tone, most likely indicating a lie or half-truth. He was skilled, but she was a specialist at reading people. When dinner was over, Naruto stood up and looked at his guests before speaking in a serious tone, showing that he meant business. Now that we are a bit more comfortable, and also out of hearing range, mind telling me why you're all hiding your identities as shinobi behind those henge? The blonde said, not missing the shocked looks on the Chunin faces while Enko narrowed her eyes at their hosts. Yamato Flagship's dining hall. The members of Team Enko froze on their respective seats as Naruto just told them he knew they were shinobi and that they were hiding behind a henge. Enko had the feeling they knew from the beginning, and that's the reason why they were invited to this ship. However, Naruto had left her with no choice when he extended the invitation. It really depends, sir. Who's asking this question? Enko replied, trying to get more information about Naruto. As expected from you, miss. You are definitely the leader of your team, but you really need to answer my question now. Naruto told her. Enko subconsciously went to grab for a kunai in her coat when the clicking of a sword being drawn caught her attention. Looking sideways, she saw Mia with her thumb on the handle of her sword, ready to leap in and do similar damage she did to the pirate ship, and in Enko's memories, that was not a good way to die. I strongly advise you to refrain from any violent action while on this ship. I would really hate it if I had to use my sword in this place. I really love it since I'm the one who decorated, Mia said while keeping her voice low. Even if you manage to get past me and the girls, and that's a big if, it would do you no good since we're still in the middle of nowhere, and who would cure you and your team from the poison you've just all ingested during dinner? Naruto added from his seat. Pea poison, what the hell are you talking about? We've all eaten the same food, Tenten suddenly said, with panic in her tone. Niji and Lee remained silent, but they also started to feel nervous and could not believe they fell for such an easy trap. Well, remember that delicious sake I made you drink at the beginning of the meal? That was laced with a powerful neurotoxin that will stop your heart after some time if an antidote is not taken in time to counter its effect. We obviously are immune to it, and I bet you're all already feeling your heartbeat racing up. Kazuhana supplied, still with her casual tone, even though she just dropped a bomb on them. True to her words, the members of the Konoha team, with the exception of Lee, were starting to feel the discomfort in their chest area. The symptoms were perfectly matching with what Kazuhana just told them. Enko couldn't believe her luck. They didn't even make it to Kirigakure, and they were already facing a life-and-death crisis. Unfortunately for her and the younger ones, the orders were clear. They were not to be identified by Kiri as shinobi from the Leaf, and those people weren't going to buy any lie from them. Do not misunderstand me though, miss. I may have a contract with Kirigakure for patrolling this part of the seas. This doesn't make me nor any of my crew members a Kiri shinobi. I'm not going to hide the fact that we do share friendly relationships with them. However, we do not belong to them, Naruto said, as if reading her mind and the reasons why she didn't want to speak. The snake mistress sighed and knew she had no choice but to trust this masked man. It was also true that he could have turned them into the Kiri shinobi from the other ship at any time but didn't. Furthermore, if he really was the same man that saved Wave Country, there was still hope for her and the team to make it out alive while not betraying their home village. Enko nodded to her team and they all cancelled the henge that hid their true appearances. They still had no headband to identify them as Konoha shinobi, but Enko was more or less famous for being Orochimaru's former student, so she had her own profile in the bingo book, making it quite simple to connect the dots for whoever had knowledge of that. Konoha's snake mistress, Mitarashi Enko. Former student of the Snake Sannin Orochimaru and A-rank Jonin Kunoichi from Konohagakure. I'm afraid I don't know anything about your team, though I believe this one to be a Hyuga. Naruto mused out loud as he saw Niji and his pale white eyes that betrayed his origins. You've had what you wanted from us, now give us the antidote. Enko yelled at him, suddenly standing up from her seat. She was instantly intercepted by one of the two women who were supposed to have gone to sleep. She was the one with the incredible movements and sword skills, and said woman was currently holding her long sword against Enko's neck, ready to cut at Naruto's command or any active threat against him. That's enough, Miria, Galatea. You can both stand down for now, we were simply talking, nothing more. And here I thought Kazuhana was the hot-blooded one, Naruto said, as the one who was holding her sword against Enko stepped back from her position to went to stand next to Naruto. Footsteps were heard from the room next to theirs, and seconds later, the second missing woman appeared and also went to stand next to Naruto. The blonde gave her a nod and she seemed to relax herself at that. As soon as she did, Enko and her teammates felt the pressure in their chests slowly disappear, as if the poison was never there to begin with. They looked at each other, unable to grasp what had just happened to them. What? How? But I thought Tenten was relieved to see the pain in her chest lifted but couldn't comprehend how. Enko, though, knew they had just been scammed by that man and his crew. Nevertheless, the pain felt real and she was curious as to how they had managed to trick her into believing she was going into cardiac arrest. The snake mistress was also impressed. Being a torture and interrogation expert herself, this man's methods were quite something. One would usually break a group like theirs into smaller groups of individuals and work from there, but this man used their collective fear against them by triggering genuine reactions from her own teammates to influence her decisions as their leader. There was never any poison in our drinks, right? Enko asked, as her teammates' eyes widened at her question, not missing the smirk on Kazahana's face. Bingo, you sure understood this fast, as expected of one of the foremost TNI expert from the Leaf. You are correct, there was no poison in the sake, just some mass hysteric reaction and something else you needn't concern yourselves with, in order to help you make your decision. Naruto replied while the Leaf Chunin released a collective sigh at the news of them not poisoned nor dying. Now that you know where we come from, what are you going to do about it? Enko asked him. Nothing much, I have nothing against the Leaf. I will still take you to Kiri and keep your identities hidden if that's what you wish. You can also stay on this ship until our escort mission is over and we'll drop you back in Wave after that, if you don't trust us with keeping your secret. Naruto said with a shrug. Enko noticed a hint of falsehood again in his speech when he spoke about Konoha but chose to leave it at that for now. I will need to discuss this with my team in private if you don't mind. Enko replied. Sure, take all the time you need, time is all we have currently. Miria, Galatea, you can both return to your quarters, for real this time. Our guests will behave, won't they? Naruto said, to which the Konoha team eagerly nodded and the two blonde women left the room for good this time. Miria had silver eyes and shoulder length, blonde hair styled in a razor shag cut that she tied it in a ponytail. As Naruto's other wives, she had a very nice body for a decent height of 5 feet 9 inches. She seemed like the serious type and didn't smile at all. Galatea had straight, very long flowing blonde hair. She was also the tallest among their group with 6 feet 1 inch. She often had a smug expression on her face. As the other four, she seemed to be in her late 20s. Naruto then stood up, and to everyone's astonishment, he started to collect the dishes and went to the sink to wash them. None of them had, though he would do these kind of chores on his own ship. Mia and Kazahana simply sipped their tea while watching their captain. Oh, and before you make a decision, let me tell you something. I know those guys in Kiri, they wouldn't mind you walking in as you are right now and asking questions about their position in your upcoming war. I'm not sure of their answer about that though, Naruto said as he continued working on the dishes. Once done, he silently left the room followed by Mia and Kazahana, leaving the Konoha team on their own as they started to discuss their options. Main Island's docks. In the end, Team Enko decided to trust Naruto and continued their journey to Kirigakure with him. They insisted on keeping their identities as Konoha shinobi a secret though, not wanting to disobey the orders they had been given by their superiors. Technically, they had already failed, due to the blonde and his crew finding out about them. However, as he told them, Naruto wasn't a part of Kiri's forces, only a subcontractor, so it wasn't so bad. There you go, Kirigakure is east from here, about half a day of walking at civilian pace. We will resupply and rest here for 3 days before we leave for Wave. If you want to join us, then be there before we leave, Naruto said as he saw the Konoha team off. Won't you even tell me your real name, Kuro Kitsune? Enko asked, already knowing his answer since the man seemed quite adamant to keep his face mask on at all times. Until we meet again, miss. Naruto replied, not answering her question, and he left without looking back as he made his way toward to his ship. Once the Leaf Shinobi had left the area, Naruto snapped his fingers and 2 shadows slowly jumped out of nowhere. I need you two to follow them and report everything you can on their activities in Kirigakure to me without being seen by them. They will travel at civilian speed so you can let them take some lead if you want, but don't take too long either. We leave in 3 days so don't be late. You have to report back here no matter what they do, and since I don't plan to come back here for quite some time after that, Naruto said as they nodded and disappeared again. Are you sure it was safe to send those 2 after them? They are less than discreet when they get into one of their eternal arguments, Mia told him, as saw the 2 shadows disappearing into the crowd, following the Konoha team while keeping a safe distance from them. You worry too much, Mia-chan, it will give you early wrinkles on your beautiful face. They're both quite powerful so there's no need to concern yourself, You act almost like a mother. Naruto did not have the time to finish his sentence when he sensed a rush of ki from his purple-haired wife as she gripped the handle of her katana. Like a what, Naruto-kun? Mia said threateningly, caressing the handle of her blade. A big sister, yes, like a big sister, Mia-chan. Naruto pleaded, cursing his big mouth. Much better, dear, now let's get you some lunch, Mia said with a smile, while Naruto sighed in relief, following after his wife. They were about to return inside the ship when both of them stopped in their track without looking back. Kazuhana, Galatea and Miria instantly appeared next to Naruto and all prepared to unsheath their swords. 4, no 5, all Jonin level and closing fast, they will be here in 30 seconds. Galatea reported. Naruto raised a hand up, signaling his wives to stand down while he turned back toward the island. You already had your fun yesterday with those pirates, I think it's my turn this time, Naruto said to his wives. Fortunately for him, this part of the docks were almost empty and all the civilians had already departed toward Kirigakure. That meant he would be able to unleash a little bit of his power without attracting unwanted attention. True to Galatea's predictions, footsteps were heard 20 seconds later, and the invaders came in sight. Looking to their headbands, they were carrying missing nines because of the hidden miss symbol slashed with a horizontal line on them. Die, Kuro Kitsune! With your head we become famous for killing a Kage slayer! Yelled one of them as they approached Naruto's ship. Once again, Naruto sighed as his wives were laughing at him for that moniker. He knew he would have to get used to it from now on. At least, this had the benefit of placing him in the good mood to deal with his incoming opponents. Uzumaki Kenpo, Furin Ka and Zanrai, Naruto said without moving an inch. Lightning sparks started to gather all around his body and not a second later, he instantly phased out of existence, only to appear again right in the middle of the 4 missing nines as he elbowed the first one he met on his way. That one never saw what hit him and found himself propelled backward, his chest hurting like hell as it was lit on fire. One of the missing nin tried to use a sword to cut him, but to their group's astonishment, the blonde merely blocked his slash using a finger, no armored glove, no hidden blade, just his damn finger. To the others of the assaulting group it felt ridiculous, however, to the one who just attempted the cut, it felt like trying to cut through a rock, maybe even harder than that. Just after that, the 4 started to panic as killing intent started to gather all around them, rendering them all oblivious to their surroundings and comrades. The only one not caught in that strange jutsu was Naruto's first victim. That one managed to take off his Jonin vest and was currently watching as the blonde used moves so fast he couldn't even follow them. The man watched as Naruto mercilessly slaughtered his comrades with moves he couldn't even comprehend. When the last one fell and Naruto turned back to him, his eyes widened as he just realized that during all this, he never heard anything from Naruto's techniques. Such powerful attacks should have made a hell of a noise each time he moved, punched, blocked or kicked an opponent. However, those moves from the masked blonde were absolutely soundless. He started to panic and tried to run away on his own, never noticing that Naruto was already in front of him. The only sounds the man heard were the beats of his heart as the blonde finished him the same way he did his comrades. Well, that was disappointing, dear, seeing you use such a move on small fries like them, Kazuhana said as she and the other wives joined him. Galatea went to check if more enemies were coming while Mia verified if all those men were dead and Miria simply took those Mia confirmed as dead and threw them in the sea. Naruto crouched down to pick a small book up and started to scan its content. Well, that explains it, check this out, girls, Naruto said, giving the book to his wives, already opened at a particular page for them that read. Name, unknown. Nickname, Kuro Kitsune. Age, 20 to 25. Rank S. Status, unknown, at least Jonin. Attributes, Kenjutsu S and Taijutsu S. Affinities, wind, fire, lightning, earth. Bloodline unknown. Description, blonde hair, blue eyes, see picture. Wears a face mask to keep his identity hidden. Defeated S-rank Kiri Yonde Mizukage, Yagura the Jinchuriki of the Sanbai. Action, do not engage. Bounty, none. Ha ha ha, look at that picture, this is so funny, Mia said as she and the other wives were reading that book. The picture they took was one of Naruto eating a bowl of ramen in a restaurant of Kiri. What are you going to do about this, Naruto-kun? Miria asked her husband. I know who did this, come, we're going to Kiri. I have an old friend of mine to visit. Mia-chan, you're on ship duty. Naruto grumbled as he left, followed by Kazuhana, Galatea and Miria. Meanwhile, in Kirigakure, a busty redhead sneezed in her office as she felt a chill down her spine. Something wrong, Mizuki-sama? One of her guard asked. Nope, everything is fine. Someone must be talking about me. I hope it's a handsome man, she replied, missing the sweat drops on her guards' heads. Kirigakure, Kage Tower? It only took 1 hour for Naruto and his group to arrive in Kirigakure. They had gone the same way the Konoha team did, but, contrary to them, Naruto's group didn't need to mask their speed and went all out toward their destination. Naruto did notice the moment they went past the leaf shinobi, also spotting his 2 spies following after them. With their current speed, it would take them another 6 hours to get there. Upon arriving into the village, Naruto sent Kazuhana and Miria shopping the supplies for their ship. They were supposed to do it in the port town but had to change place, since Naruto decided to visit Kiri after his fight with the missing Nines. The blonde had been less than pleased to see his profile in the famous bingo book. Apparently, someone he knew in Kiri was the responsible for that, and he was on his way to meet that benefactor. Galatea went with him as an escort, and also as the only person who would easily find the other 2 once they're done, given her godly sensory skills. They were both currently waiting in the lobby of the Mizuki office as the secretary had told them to wait for a little bit. Can I ask you a question, honey? Galatea asked her husband, using her native language. In English? Why? Is there a problem, Tichan? Naruto replied, also using her language. Why are we even here? You always knew this would happen from the moment you declined their offer, and yet you seem surprised by the outcome of your refusal. Galatea replied. I know this is all going according to our plan, but I wanted to make sure of something before we move on to the next phase, Naruto said as the door to the office suddenly opened. Mizuki-sama will see you now, the secretary said before leading them in her leader's office. With Team Anko. The Konoha team was still on its way to the Hidden Mist, oddly enough, still with the civilians that were traveling with them on the transporting ships since Wave Country. Anko was once again bored out of her mind as she cursed having to disguise herself as a civilian. Her team seemed to be doing better than her. It seems that having come close to death during their encounter with the mysterious savior of Wave, at least from their point of view, had put their mind back on the mission and they were now 100% focused on it. None of them had noticed the small addition to their group, with 2 more civilian women that tagged along ever since they left the port. Said women were currently in the back of the group, in the middle of a conversation, it seems, since no one around them could understand a word of what they were speaking about. I'm telling you, he is my destined one, the only one who can touch me, the first one said. What are you talking about? You haven't even performed the baptism with him yet, have you? The second asked. So what if I haven't? The same can be said about you too, the first one answered with a smirk. He said that we weren't ready for it yet, and that he's willing to wait for us, the second girl said as she heavily sighed. He doesn't need to be that shy around us, even though he already has 4 other wives, the first added. True, but that's why we came to love him in the first place, the second replied. For once we can agree on something, let's pick up the pace, the first concluded. Both wore a large cloak that hid their entire body, so no one knew what they really looked like. Not that anyone really cared, since they were all just a bunch of strangers on the road together since it felt safer to travel that way. Mizuki's office. The secretary left them and closed the door behind her after she had led Naruto and Galatea into the Mizuki's office. Seated behind her desk was Terumi Mei, Godame Mizuki of the Hidden Mist. She was a very beautiful woman in her 30s with green eyes and ankle-length, auburn hair. Kuro Kitsune, what a pleasant surprise to see you. What are you doing here? Mei asked, upon seeing Naruto in her office. I'm afraid this isn't a social call, Mizuki Dano. Naruto replied in a neutral tone, showing Mei he was dead serious this time. Okay, so what happened? Mei asked, a little surprised by his tone. I came upon this while killing 5 of your missing Nines at the port of the main island, Naruto said as he threw the bingo book at her, already open to the section with his profile in it. I see, I suppose you think we have something to do with this, right? Mei said as she closed the book. Her voice had a tint of sadness in it, and she did not look back into Naruto's eyes. The picture has been taken here in Kiri, and I pretty much remember what part of my skills I used in the war that put you in charge of this village, Mei, Naruto said, seeing her sad made him softer than what he intended to be. I don't know how to say this, but I think you're right. After you refused our offer to instate you and your crew as true members of Kirigakure, some among the council came to see you as a threat. This is all politics. They were part of the leadership during the rebellion, and now they are part of this village as well, as council members. I need them to rule in peace, and I think this came from one of them, Mei admitted with a sigh. Turning to his wife, Naruto saw Galatea nodding back at him, signaling that she had deemed Mei trustful enough during her admission of not being aware of her counsel's actions. Galatea was so skilled with chakra detection that she could tell from reading a person's chakra signature if he was lying or not, and it seemed that Mei told him the truth. I understand, Mei. Though I wouldn't be surprised if among those members, there was one or more of them that supports those pirates you've paid me to deal with. That's the only reason I can think of why my presence here would bother them this much, other than pure paranoia. Naruto said. You are most certainly right. Some of them had been raiding those ships that belonged to Yagura in the past, during our civil war. Now that he's gone, they needed new targets, and you were in their way. I will have to deal with them one day, but not now. Not when we are still recovering from the war. I can't afford any more internal struggling for power, at least for a while. I am sorry about this, Mei replied. That's one of the many reasons I decided to never align myself with any village, no matter how generous their offers may seem. I value my freedom too much for that. This, unfortunately, also means that our business venture ends today. I trust you, but I don't trust your counsel, so we must part ways for now, Naruto said. Mei was sad. She had come to enjoy the blonde's presence, and now they were forced to go separate ways. This was just not meant to be. Now she had to stay strong for her village and the people who counted on her to lead them in those troubled times. Seeing his friend sad, Naruto put a hand on her shoulder and took out a small box out of his coat. Inside was a small black pearl that he gave to her. This is something for you, as a token of our friendship, Mei. If you ever find yourself one day in a situation where you are in need of my help, just throw it in the water and I'll definitely come to you as fast as I can, Naruto said as she took the pearl and nodded. After that, Naruto left her office and went to look for his two other wives, hoping that they did not spend all the money on things like sake or weapons. Back on the Yamato. Naruto did find Miria and Kazuhana a bit too late, as the two had already spent a sizable amount of money on sake and weapons before he could locate them. Even if he had managed to find them in time, it was doubtful the result would have been any different, since he could never say no to any of them. They were now back on the Yamato with Mia, in the dining room, talking about the conversation that took place in Mei's office. Phase 1 of the plan is now over. With my appearance in the bingo book and the meeting with the Konoha team, it's only a matter of time before the second phase starts, Naruto said, as he finished his report on what had happened with Mei. Why didn't you show her your true face or tell her your real name, if you really meant what you said to her about trust and friendship? Mia asked him. Besides you four and the other two tagging along with the Konoha team right now, there is no one else I could trust with my identity. Mei has shown she values our friendship to a certain extent, but above all that, she values her village even more, Naruto replied. Well, that's understandable. She did fight hard to get where she is right now after all, and she also has a lot of people looking up to her too as the leader of her village, Miria said. Anything else of note happened during your visit, Naruto-kun? Kazuhana asked, already a bit drunk with the sake she just brought in Kiri. Nothing much, really, Naruto started to say before Galatea interrupted him. He gave Mei a new picture of him for her to replace the old one in the bingo book. It's that photo with him destroying the bridge in Wave, Galatea said as Naruto nervously scratched the back of his head with a forced smile on his face. I thought that if I am to have a profile in that damn book, I'd rather have a more badass picture of me in there, you know, to scare the competition away, Naruto confessed. But I really thought the previous one made you look so cute, Kazuhana said, making him pout. Alright, let's move on please. So we're leaving Water Country after this? Mia asked. Yes, I have no doubt they will take the bait, so we'll be quite busy with them once Phase 2 is activated, Naruto replied. Are we supposed to wait here for 2 days, for Stella and Rana to come back with the Konoha team? Galatea asked him. I know of something really fun we could all do during those 2 days of waiting, Naruto said with a smirk while looking at his 4 wives. Water Country, around the secondary island northwest of Kirigakure. Naruto had moved the Yamato from the mainland to a remote island located northwest from Kiri. He had decided to leave behind him one last gift to Mei, the eradication of a pirate stronghold one of his merchant ship had found out by accident during a visit to Kiri. A/N. Pretty sure some of you were expecting or even hoping for another outcome, smiley face. According to Mei, this island had been abandoned quite some time ago, due to the lack of natural resource it provided. This in turn allowed those pirates to make it the ground base for their activities and operations in the area. Since most of their income came from the raids, they didn't really feel the need to concern themselves with issues like natural resources in the first place. The Yamato was currently cruising in a circle at slow pace around the island, trying to keep a safe distance from it, to avoid early detection. The pirate ship, which served in the attack on the civilian ship that Naruto escorted back to Kirigakure, most likely came from here as well. The report gave an estimate of 20 ships into the pirates' hands, making it approximately 600 men in the enemy ranks. The odds seemed less than favorable for Naruto and his reduced crew of 4 women and himself with more than 100 men for each of them to fight on their own. Despite those odds, they seemed quite relaxed as they stood on the deck of the Yamato. 746 contacts, most of them are ranging from civilian to Chunin level. I can also sense the weakest of them are concentrated in the center of the island. There are a few of them with Jonin level also staying in the center, but nothing close to a threat for any of us, Galatea announced as she took out the claymore she held on her back. As expected from you, Shingon no Galatea, you can feel all this despite the distance, Miria said as she also prepared herself and drew out her own claymore. Both of them closed their eyes and started to gather their yuki. Once they reopened them, their eyes had turned yellow instead of their natural silver color, signaling that they were battle-ready. Should we take down their ships as well, Naruto-kun? Mia asked her husband as she prepared her katana as well. Leave them be for the moment. We will concentrate everything on the men first, Naruto replied before turning to Kazuhana. Everyone is ready, Hana-chan, you may begin, Naruto said to her as Mia, Galatea and Miria all came closer to him. Well, let's go then, Kazuhana replied as she too joined the group and then lifted a hand. A gush of wind suddenly appeared around them and took them toward the island. On the island, the arrival of Naruto and his group on the island's beach created a sandstorm, due to Kazuhana and her wind powers combined to the sand that laid there. This caused every single pirate on that island to spot them, and an alert that could be heard throughout the island was launched. The group separated in 3 subgroups with Mia and Kazuhana forming a pair, Miria and Galatea forming a second pair, and finally Naruto going on his own. The purple-haired beauties went to the ships while the blondes stayed on the shore. The pirates came out of absolutely everywhere. Naruto had made sure to start the attack at dawn, a strategic time where they would most likely be all there and sleepy. Sleepy they were, as Naruto's group started to slaughter them left and right with no true resistance. With Mia and Kazuhana. As they landed on the first of the 20 pirates' ships that were stationed in the area, Mia and Kazuhana started to raise hell for their crews as both unleashed their powers on the unfortunate fools. Ikaros, Shinso, Mia said as her blade glowed white, and then with a single swing, she cut everything down in a 100-meter radius, including the ship's mast. Arara, and here I thought we were supposed to preserve the ships, this one ain't going anywhere now with the nice upgrade you just provided it with, Kazuhana teased her friend before she too unsheathed her katana. Chire, Senbenzakura, Kazuhana said as the wind picked up and her blade glowed pink. It then suddenly separated in thousands of smaller parts, which flew away and targeted the fortunate souls who had escaped from Mia's initial strike. They went on like this from ship to ship, with Mia performing the initial strikes while Kazuhana took care of those who were lucky enough to escape the first hit, never letting a single survivor in their wake. With Miria and Galatea, the two blonde had to deal with those who had set camp on the beach, which basically meant half of the enemy's forces. Kazuhana had dropped them right in the middle of their camp, and they were also in the midst of releasing some of their hidden strength. Kori no Sekai, Galatea announced as every man running toward them in a radius of 100 meters froze on their spot, unable to take another step. She then used her blade and started to kill off those closest to her position. I see that your perfect control over Yuki not only serves as a good sensor tool but also allows you to physically manipulate those around in a certain distance, Galatea, Miria said as she too started to release her powers. Kamikakushi, Miria called as she instantly disappeared from her position beside Galatea. The field was soon covered with replications of Miria's as she appeared in front of every man that had been caught by Galatea's trap. The same thing that had happened on the civilian ship took place again, as those men were all cut down by Miria's illusions. As expected of you, Genii no Miria. You certainly live up to your moniker, Galatea said to her partner. With their combined powers, the men from the ground camp stood no chance and, as their harem sisters, they gave no quarters to the enemy and no survivor was left alive. With Naruto, the captain of the Yamato went off on his own toward the center of the island, hoping to find the strongest fighters among the pirates. Fortunately for him, he did find a smaller base where the Jonin-level pirates were all staying. Unfortunately for them, they were doing the one thing Naruto loathes the most. They were running a slave camp with the prisoners they took from their raids, and said prisoners were all women that they gathered for their sick pleasure in this base. Uzumaki Kenpo, Furinka and Zanrai, Naruto yelled, getting the attention of every enemy that was inside that base. Needless to say that no one with a penis was able to leave that base alive, aside from Naruto of course. On the beach. The 4 members of Naruto's crew had assembled on the shore as they had finished their respective tasks. The ships had been cleaned out of their previous occupants, and the ground camp had been evacuated from all its inhabitants. They first had been surprised when they felt the level of killing intent rising to godly levels near the center of the island, meaning Naruto had found out something that was most likely not to his liking. They then understood why, when he came back with close to 100 women, all in shock at what they both were subjected to and what they saw Naruto doing to the men responsible for their suffering. Naruto had thought that the ships would be a good way to move those women back to Kiri, where they then could be returned to their families and loved ones. However, seeing the state of those ships after Miya and Kazuhana had their fun, he sighed and then moved toward the sea. Ninpo, Kuchios no Jutsu. He called out as a pack of whales emerged from the water. How may we serve you, my lord? One of the creature asked him. I want you to tow 4 ships and safely escort those women back to the main island's port. Naruto answered and then turned back to the women. He summoned a case and opened it. Inside was a load of money that was evenly distributed among the women. Please board 4 of those ships, they will lead you back to the mainland. Here is some money for all of you, to cover additional travel expenses if you need to go somewhere else from there in order to go back to your homes. Naruto said. When the 4 ships departed, Naruto turned back to his wives and smiled. Let's go back too, we have to meet with the others tonight. This isn't what I had in mind when I said we'd have some fun, but I'm still glad we came. He said as they smiled back at him and went back toward the Yamato. Yamato flagship. Naruto and his group had joined up with Team Anko the night following their attack on that pirate's base in Water Country. His 2 spies had returned as well, acting as if they were coming back from a business trip on another part of Water Country. They also had 2 other guests coming with them, as Inari and Tazuna, Tsunami's son and father, were really returning from a business trip in the area. Everyone was currently on board the Yamato, for a 3-day trip that was leading them back to the village in Wave Country. It was now lunchtime and Miya had once again prepared the food as the other wives weren't that good as cooks. Kazuhana was more specialized in drinks, Galatea and Miria were barely eating anything due to their particular morphology while Rana and Stella were quite clueless in a kitchen. Miya loved cooking so everyone was happy with that setting. The Konoha team, mostly the younger ones, were a bit skeptic when it came to the first bite. The memory of their last meal on board the Yamato was still fresh in their mind. They still didn't know how Naruto managed to trick them into believing they were going into cardiac arrest. However, seeing how Inari and Tazuna, being civilians, were eagerly devouring Miya's food, they dropped their guard and enjoyed the meal as well. So Anko-san, how was your visit in Kirigakure? I think you have your answers about them taking part or not in the war. Naruto suddenly asked the leaf Kunoichi, making her choke on her food. How did you know about our mission? She managed to say, as she regained her composure. Well, it wasn't that hard to guess once I knew where you came from. There was also the fact that you were dead set on keeping your identities a secret. Everyone knows that war is coming at your doors, against your old buddies from Kumo and IWA. Your only choice to win this war is to ally yourself with Kiri, in order to make it a 3 major villages alliance against 2 since Suna is with you on this. You had to be discreet about this, so in order to not raise any suspicion, your team was sent to investigate first, before anything could be officially initiated. Naruto said, taking a break to study their reaction, and he wasn't disappointed. The Konoha shinobi were amazed by his accurate analysis of their situation. So, how close am I so far? Warm or cold? Naruto asked after a few seconds. You're damn hot, if you want my opinion. Anko instantly replied, knowing full well the double meaning of her answer to him. It got the result she wanted as 6 pairs of hands instantly stopped moving their fork and spoon, while 6 pairs of eyes latched onto hers. She couldn't help but grin when she felt the intense glare from all the women of Naruto's crew on her. Quite forward, aren't we? I'm afraid to say I'm already spoken for. Naruto told her with a chuckle as he saw his wives and fiancés resuming their meal in a strange silence. From what we've seen, they are not in a position to participate in another war. Their economy is pretty bad and they already lost quite a bit of their former army during that civil war of theirs. My opinion will be transmitted to our council, what they do with it is up to them. Why are you asking anyway? I'm pretty sure you already knew all that. I've seen your ships come and go all around Kiri, so you must already have a pretty good grasp of their current situation as well. Anko said. Well, that was true until yesterday, when I cut all ties with them. Before you ask, here is why I cancelled my contract with them. Naruto replied, taking out the newly edited bingo book. That version had been updated with a new picture of him. The book had been opened to his page for everyone around the table to see the information mentioned about him. Anko took a moment to study his profile and then gave him back the book. Pretty impressive, you're the one who took Yugura down, how did you do it? Fighting a Jinchuriki and winning is no small feat, Anko asked him, still trying to fish out information about the masked man. What's a Jinchuriki, sensei? Tenten interrupted the conversation, as she didn't understand the meaning of that word. Anko sighed and was about to say something when Naruto cut her off. Jinchuriki, literally the power of human sacrifice, are human beings that have bijou, or tailed beasts, sealed within them. They exhibit extraordinary powers, and in some cases are even more powerful than their tailed beasts, because they have the intelligence to use their beasts' powers effectively. The Jinchuriki are typically lonely people, viewed by those around them as the tailed beasts that had been sealed within them, leading to prejudice and being hated and feared. The blonde replied before Anko could. I believe each major shinobi village always had at least one Jinchuriki at their disposal, ever since the Shodaime Hokage gave them away to the other villages as an act of good faith. How come you don't know about your own Jinchuriki, girl? It was my understanding that Konoha had the Kyuubi and that it was sealed into a child that should be around your age. Naruto asked Tenten, without missing a bit of Anko narrowing her eyes at him, after she heard him disclose one of their village's most hidden secret. The knowledge about Jinchuriki and bijou has always been a highly classified subject in Konoha. Only shinobi above a certain age are aware of the whole thing. I'm not supposed to openly discuss about them with the younger generation, it's a crime punished by death. Anko replied. The current flow of the conversation didn't please Anko, so she tried to change the subject, completely forgetting that Naruto never answered her about his fight against Yugura. So, now that you don't work with Kirigakure anymore, where will you go? She asked Naruto. Kiri did represent a big part of our trade agreements in the elemental nations, however, it wasn't the only one. We will continue to strive using other parts of the continent such as the lovely town in Wave Country, Naruto said, seeing Tazuna nod in gratitude at him. The conversation then turned to more trivial subjects, and shinobi matters were left aside for the remaining of the trip. Kanahigakure, Council Chamber. The journey from Wave Country back into Fire Country, and then to Konoha had been less eventful than the other way around for Team Anko, as their leader now stood inside the council chamber. The kunoichi was currently being debriefed by her superiors as they were going through the report she wrote about the mission in Kirigakure. After Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped down, and with Danzo's rise to power, the High Council of Konoha changed. The civilian representatives and the elders, both parties whose support allowed the Warhawk to seize the Hokage's seat, now had a permanent say in all matters that concerned the village, military affairs included. The shinobi representatives were still there, of course, however, they didn't have the power to do as they please anymore since they also needed to consult with the elders and civilians representatives from now on, before any decision. Currently among them in the room was Hyuga Hayashi, Uchiha Sasuke, Aburame Shibi, Inuzuka Tsum, Yamanaka Inoichi, Nara Shikaku, Akimichi Choza and Sarutobi Asuma. The only empty seats were those from the Senju and Namikaze representatives. So, according to your reports, there is nothing for us to gain from an association with the Hidden Mist at this point. Danzo asked Anko without looking at her, his eyes still scanning the content of her report. Yes, Hokage-sama. Most of their citizens are quite poor and can barely manage to survive. Their army is reduced to the absolute minimum they need to defend their village. They couldn't mount an invasion force even if they wanted to. Finally, their kage is a young woman, going by the name of Terumi Mei. She seems inexperienced, but the people around talked about her with lots of respect. Anko replied, not missing the reaction from most of the males inside the room, not believing that a woman should be allowed to become a kage. That's most unfortunate. I really thought that naval fleet of theirs would have been a great asset for us against our enemies in the war. Anyway, that brings us to the second part of your report, that man from Wave that supposedly possesses a fleet of his own. Tell us more about him. Danzo said. Anko told the council everything that happened during those meetings between them and Naruto. She had purposely been vague about him in her report, since she basically knew close to nothing about the mysterious blonde. She told them how he transformed Wave from a piss-poor country into one of the richest places she had ever been to, thanks to Naruto's merchant fleet and his contacts. Now, that was something that greatly interested the civilian representatives, since Konoha's economy had been less than good for the past decade and Fire Country had several naval ports towns that could use such help. The shinobi representatives had been impressed by the man's resume, since Anko took out a bingo book she bought and opened it to Naruto's page for everyone to see his profile and the result of his actions. Needless to say, all have been deeply surprised to see who the man had defeated, Yugura, Jinchuriki of the Sanbai and former Mizukage of the Hidden Mist himself. When Anko described the strange powers that the women in Naruto's crew all seemed to possess, added to the fact that Naruto himself had told her how he cancelled his contract with Kirigakure, Danzo was convinced too that a meeting with that mysterious masked man was necessary. Danzo still valued strength above everything in this man, this mercenary, seemed like everything the Leaf was currently looking for. Konoha needed alliances, yes, but the sort of long-time alliance he would have been forced to deal with Kiri, like he did with Suna, was not in their best interest. Sure, they would get military help, when asked for, but they would also have to provide assistance if the situation was reversed. Added to the fact that those kind of alliances were meant last over time, it was less than favorable in his book, as far as Konoha's freedom of action was involved. However, there was still the matter of convincing that man to work for them. Everyone knew that it wouldn't be an easy task. He didn't struck them as someone who would move solely based on the economic factor of the equation, being quite rich already. They needed to present that man with an incentive to come work for them. Danzo suddenly thought of something and signaled an ANBU to his left. Summon the other members of Team 7 in this room immediately, the Hokage announced. What are you thinking about, Sensei? Uchiha Sasuke asked his mentor. It was a well-known fact that Sasuke, additionally to being part of Team 7, had been tutored by Danzo in the shinobi arts throughout his career. You and your team will take the mission to go recruit that man into our ranks. Haruno Sakura, like her mother once was, is our best seduction expert. Considering the fact that the man seems to enjoy having women around him, with his all-women crew, I think she is what we need for that mission. You, on the other hand, will go and impress that man with your skills. I'm sure that above money, he will come to value power, like us. Danzo replied to his apprentice. The Uchiha was pleased by his master's reply and from having his ego stroked in front of the whole council. Team 7 had arrived during Danzo's explaining, and, when they were told of their next mission, Sakura could see the pride in her mother's eyes. Haruno Yuko is a former Konoha kunoichi and seduction expert, now a member of the civilian representative since she married a rich civilian man that mysteriously died a few months after their marriage. The other members of Team 7 were Sai, an orphan that came out of Danzo's previous shinobi training program, and Hataki Kakashi as their senior jonin, since Sasuke had already received the title due to his proximity with Danzo. Some among the shinobi representatives and Anko couldn't help but sigh at what they were seeing. For Danzo, the end justifies the means. Such a mission would have never been approved during the other Hokage's reign. The fact that a mission this important for the Leaf was openly discussed with the civilian representatives was already a mistake. Anko really didn't want to involve the savior of Wave Country, but she had to follow orders. She took relief in the fact that no matter how skilled the pink-haired bitch may be in the seduction arts, she knew the blonde wouldn't be swayed that easily. She was of course aware of the rumors about Sakura managing to seduce Sasuke, the Hokage's apprentice, and Uchiha Scion himself. That was something else Anko felt sorry about in advance for what she was going to put the masked blonde through. Sasuke was one of the worst human beings she ever had the chance to meet. He was selfish, arrogant, and thought of himself as being God's gift to mankind. The chances for Sasuke ridiculing himself, and the Leaf at the same time, in front of Kuro Kitsune were much higher than the Haruno managing to score with the blonde. The mission was approved nevertheless, with the elders' and civilians' representatives' support. It wasn't that hard and there was nothing much the Shinobi Council could do even if they were against it. The mission would start immediately, since Anko was told when they parted ways that the blonde and his crew would remain in Wave for a week before going back toward the sea. By leaving now, they would arrive just in them to prevent them from leaving. Wave Country. Team 7 lost no time as they immediately left Konoha after the council meeting. 3 days had passed since then, and they were finally arriving in Wave Country. True to Anko's report, and that picture they had seen in the bingo book, the only way to reach Wave was by boat, since the bridge that connected it to the mainland had been destroyed. The ruins of the former bridge were still there. Kakashi and Sasuke could not help but wonder what kind of technique was used to obliterate that gigantic structure to such an extent. All they knew is that the man only used one punch to achieve that result. The boat trip was a short one and they were now walking through some kind of a local festival. It was the middle of summer, so that wasn't so rare. People were partying and enjoying themselves peacefully. The Konoha Nins were surprised at how careless they all seemed to be, for such a rich-looking village. There was no evidence of guards or shinobi around, only civilians with men and women in yukata with children running around the several stands that provided entertainments. Upon asking the people around them, Team 7 learned that it was a festival to celebrate the first anniversary of their village being freed from Gato and his men. Their savior was apparently also in town to attend the festival with his crew. Team 7 smiled at that particular piece of information. They had managed to arrive in time, it seems, and the festival couldn't have been placed at a better time, allowing them to approach their target undetected in order to study him first. Well, at least that's what they thought. Tsunami's Inn. There was an especially big party going on inside Tsunami's Inn as they were celebrating both the return of their savior but also the success of Tezuna's and Inari's trip to another port village like theirs where the two had found new trading partners for them to do business with. Naruto and the girls were seated at a big table with lots of food and drinks prepared for them. They were all enjoying the party, especially Rana and Stella, when Naruto and the 4 older ones had to suddenly stop what they were doing and looked at each other. Naruto nodded to Kazuhana, to which the purple-haired beauty slowly faded away, blending in the crowd. The party was never interrupted since the blonde and his wives had been quite discreet about this. Not even a minute later, the Konoha team was spotted inside the inn as they went to seat at a table not too far from Naruto's. They saw that Team 7 had made the effort to at least disguise themselves to not appear like shinobi, but they still stood out from the rest of the crowd since in Wave, the people were not that numerous and consequently knew everyone. Tourists had become an usual occurrence, so no one found them suspicious, they just stood out. The party went on for a little bit when Kazuhana suddenly appeared out of nowhere and bumped into Sakura, who was returning to her table with drinks for her teammates. The drinks were all spilled on the pink-haired Kunoichi, and she was completely soaked. Kazuhana faked her surprise and started to profusely apologize to her unfortunate victim. "What's going on, Kazuhana?" Naruto asked as he appeared at her side. "I'm sorry, Captain. I wasn't looking and I bumped into this young lady and made her drop those drinks on herself," Kazuhana explained. "I'm sorry for what my companion did. Your clothes are all dirty now. The rooms here and through the entire town are all occupied because of the festival. Let me invite you on my ship where you can take a shower and change clothes, miss," Naruto said as he helped her up to her feet. "Sakura, my name is Haruno Sakura," she replied, not able to hide the blush on her face at how gentle this man seemed to be with her. "Well, Sakura-san, what do you say? Your friends are welcome too, of course," Naruto asked her. "I will gladly accept, sir," Sakura replied. "You can call me Kuro Kitsune," Naruto said, as he and his girls led the way toward the Yamato, with a smirk on his face. Phase 2 is now active, he thought, as they made their way back to the ship. Yamato flagship. Naruto and his crew had escorted Team 7 back on board the Yamato, where Sakura was given access to a private cabin. The Leaf Kunoichi was taking a shower while her team waited for her on the ship's deck, with Naruto and his women carefully looking after them without being too obvious. She was done quite fast, reappearing all cleaned up just a moment later, much to everyone's relief, since they were all waiting for her to come back in order to start their real mission. "There she is. I apologize once again for my companion's actions. She had a little too much to drink and wasn't looking at where she was going," Naruto said, making the first move upon seeing Sakura joining them on the deck. "That's fine, really. No one's harmed and you even allowed me to use a private room on your ship. It is the biggest ship I have ever been on. You must be quite a powerful man to own such a wonderful ship," she replied, doing her best to sound genuinely impressed while she stroked his ego. She was told that men loved it when women were acting this way. She remembered how well this worked on Sasuke, as she praised the size of his compound or the might of his skills. "Thank you. Now please follow me inside and let me offer you and your team something to drink, to compensate for those you dropped at the inn earlier," Naruto said, not reacting to Sakura's attempts in order to seduce him. The Kunoichi frowned. She didn't think her target would be so hard to get to, especially since she took the opportunity to change into one very revealing outfit of hers. She had even tried to bend over a little, revealing some cleavage to the masked man's eyes while talking in a sultry tone, and despite all this, nothing seemed to work. Naruto was not charmed in any way by her, and Sakura had to put her seduction attempt on hold for the moment. Team 7 followed after Naruto inside the ship, as the blonde led them to the dining room. They were all briefed about the masked man and how he dealt with Anko and her team when they were offered a drink as well, with the false poisoning and the psychological effect it had on them. They shared a moment of doubt when the time came to drink, but had to move on, not wanting to sound suspicious towards their host. After 5 minutes and no signs of being poisoned whatsoever, they finally relaxed a bit and lowered their guard. Sakura tried her chance again with Naruto but failed miserably, missing the smirks on each and every one of Naruto's women when the blonde completely ignored her. "So, travelers, what brings you in this lovely part of the elemental nations?" Naruto asked his first serious question after some previous empty talk to ease the mood. "You don't seem to be a member of this town. How did you know we were travelers?" Kakashi tried to ask while keeping a neutral tone, answering Naruto's question with a question of his own. "Well, that's easy. I do a lot of business around with the citizens of Wave and come here quite often. I know pretty much everyone here and never saw any of you before today," Naruto replied quickly. Seeing his host waiting for him, Kakashi decided to give Naruto the reply to his question. "To answer your question, we were in fact looking for you, Kuro-san. I am Hatake Kakashi and here is Team 7, you already know Haruno Sakura, the other two are Uchiha Sasuke and Sai. We are shinobi from the Leaf and our leader wishes to speak with you. We would like for you to assist us in the war against our enemies, as a subcontractor, very much like you did for Kirigakure during their civil war," Kakashi said as he analyzed Naruto's demeanor throughout his report. He couldn't find anything of use as Naruto remained perfectly still and silent, not betraying any emotion about the odd request he just received. I guess you knew where to find us when Anko-san and her team were debriefed. We did tell them we would stay here for a week after all. Now, she should have also reported that I am first and foremost a businessman. Why should I even consider putting mine and my crew's safety in jeopardy for your village? Naruto asked, not missing the scowl on Sasuke's face. It was beneath an Uchiha to beg for some stranger's help. Sakura was still angry at her failed attempt to seduce the blonde and Sai. Well, he seemed completely unconcerned. Kakashi decided to intervene before Sasuke could snap and ruin their chance to convince the masked man to help them. Our leaders were impressed by your skills. You just name your price, whether it be money, power, or anything you want that we may have the ability to grant you. Konoha is willing to cover any expense in order to have your backing in this matter. This is the offer I was allowed to present to you, Kakashi announced, not missing the stunned looks on his teammates' faces. That's a most intriguing offer. For your leaders to extend such a deal, they must either believe that I am that powerful, or your village's situation has become desperate enough for them to promise such a thing. Nevertheless, you've earned at least my attention. I will go and directly negotiate with your Hokage. Naruto replied with a smirk hidden behind his face mask. Not so fast. Sasuke suddenly yelled, jumping from his seat. Kakashi just sighed and was about to stop the Hokage's apprentice when Sasuke found himself restrained by 4 blades aiming at vital points of his body. Mia, Kazuhana, Miria and Galatea had appeared all around him at blinding speed and currently had their swords ready to neutralize the hot-blooded Uchiha. The ninja from Konoha couldn't help but look with widened eyes as their comrade was about to get himself killed. Naruto raised his arm, signaling his wives to stand back while he calmly looked at Sasuke. What seems to be the problem, Uchiha? Naruto asked in a neutral tone, though no one could see the grin on his face hidden by his mask. I don't trust that snake bitch's report. Before we allow you to go in Konoha and present yourself before our High Council, I want to witness your so-called power with my own eyes. Fight me in a duel and we'll see if you're worthy of our offer, Sasuke said, with anger in his voice. So you are a bit of a businessman yourself. Still, I wouldn't want to bank on some stranger's powers without taking a good look for myself first as well. Fine, come with me, I'll show you who your village is trying to hire, Naruto said as he left the room, his women and the Konoha shinobi following right after him. Forest area outside Wei Village. Naruto's group and the Konoha team had gone outside the village for that little demonstration, not wanting to disrupt the festival and ruin the mood with their visitors' bad manners. They were now inside a forest with Naruto and his girls staying on one side while the Leaf Shinobi were on another side. Naruto and Sasuke made their way toward the center of the area, standing face to face. Despite the first impression he had from Sasuke, Naruto decided to be respectful of his opponent and bowed as a sign of respect. His gesture was met with the raven-haired man's contempt, as Sasuke remained in his position and smirked. Seeing the obvious sign of disrespect, the girls from Naruto's side were ready to jump in and kill the Uchiha, but the blonde simply sighed and raised a hand toward them, asking them to stand down for the moment. Alright Uchiha, let's keep this clean, everything goes but no killing blows, Naruto announced as he saw Sasuke going into his Uchiha Taijutsu style, activating his Sharingan eyes and waiting for Naruto to move with a conceited face. I guess we'll go for Taijutsu spar then, Naruto said as he leaped toward his opponent and started to attack him. The blonde was fighting with regular punches and kicks, testing the famed prediction abilities of the Uchiha's Jujutsu. Sasuke clearly showed his mastery in his family style and how it perfectly used the Sharingan to its fullest, not allowing Naruto any openings while placing several hits of his own against his opponent. So that's the famous Sharingan, impressive abilities indeed. Naruto mused out loud as he jumped back, creating some distance with Sasuke but not showing any signs of being tired though. Kakashi and Sai remained focused, knowing that the masked man was only testing Sasuke so far. Sakura, though, didn't seem to grasp the situation and started to wildly cheer for Sasuke, completely oblivious to the disapproving looks that were cast on her by the rest of the audience. The blonde then fell into some strange taijutsu stance that none of younger Konoha nins managed to recognize. Kakashi, however, dropped his jaw as he saw Naruto's form, remembering a scene from the time when he was still a genin. That form, could it be? No, that's impossible, but where would he learn it? It doesn't make any sense, were his thoughts as he activated his own Sharingan in order to ascertain the validity of his assumption. Naruto was in a crouching position, close to the ground level, and had his fists raised in front of his face with both palms pointing toward Sasuke. The young Leaf Jonin took the initiative this time and charged toward the blonde, expecting the same result as previously. However, he was quite surprised when out of nowhere, Naruto managed to land a hit on him, and a vicious one at that, considering the cracking sound he heard when Naruto's knee impacted with his ribcage. The pain he felt from that counter was great, but even greater than that was his surprise at not being able to predict his opponent's hit. The women from Naruto's crew couldn't help but smirk at their captain's success while the Konoha team stood dumbfounded, as they saw their most promising jonin so easily countered. This didn't make any sense to Sakura and Sai. Sasuke had the advantage just a moment ago, when the masked man couldn't even touch him. Kakashi, however, now knew for sure where he had already seen that fighting style before. There's no mistake about it, that's the Monkey King's fist. Misdirection, the primary ability of that style. No matter how trained a warrior may be, our body is programmed to react in a certain way towards impending threats. The Monkey King's fist uses that flaw in the human body with its highly realistic feints, and then allows its users to place critical hits against their opponents. The way that man used his knees or elbows is also a key point for that style. Those are the most effective parts of the body in order to inflict maximum damage. The elite jonin analyzed in his mind while looking at the fight. Burning in anger, Sasuke stood back up and ran toward Naruto again, his Sharingan still activated. His opponent simply stood there and waited for him to get into striking range and launched another devastating counter against him. This time Naruto managed to elbow Sasuke behind his head, a hit that would have been enough to kill the Uchiha if the blonde so desired. Fortunately for the Konoha team, Naruto held back his power and deflected his blow at the last moment, choosing to instead knock out the arrogant fool for this time. Our Sharingan is completely useless against that style, since it amplifies that instinctive reaction's flaw, focusing our attention on the feint instead of the real attack. The form itself is quite impossible to copy, as the moves appear as a set of complete random attacks with no link nor logic behind and between them. There has only been one man that has ever mastered that style throughout the ages, the man praised as the Kami no Shinobi in his prime. Also said to have studied and learned every single jutsu and style that has ever been created in Konoha since its foundation, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage. How could that man come by such a style? Is it possible the Sandaime taught him? Kakashi wondered as he ordered Sakura and Sai to go retrieve their unconscious teammate. Well, I guess you won't need to test my skills any further than that, Naruto said with a chuckle. I've seen enough of your skills. Forgive my subordinate for his rudeness. He's not used to meeting stronger people than him, and that made him grow arrogant. I hope his confrontation with someone like you will bring him back into reality. Kakashi replied to Naruto, not wanting to confront the blonde on how he knew such a taijutsu form, at least not while they were in a hostile territory. That could wait until they are back in Konoha. Please allow me to invite you and your team on board our ship for the night. Your teammate will remain unconscious until tomorrow, so we'll have to wait for him to wake up before we leave for Konohagakure anyway, Naruto said as he led everyone back to his ship. Yamato flagship. Team 7 were escorted to private guest rooms on board Naruto's ship and all went to bed. They were given the same restrictions Team Anko received, allowing them to roam every part of the ship except for Naruto and his crew's quarters. True to Naruto's words, Sasuke remained unconscious the whole time and was put in a cabin where he could rest. Sakura refrained from trying to seduce Naruto again, as the glares she received from the women of his crew and also his brutal fight against Konoha's champion had instilled some fear into her. Kakashi and Sai had also decided to call it a night early and disappeared into their rooms. Captain's room. Naruto was sitting behind a desk in his room, with all the girls around him. His wives often slept in the same room as him instead of going back to theirs, so it wasn't that rare to see them in his room. Tonight, though, everyone was there, even the younger ones Stella and Rana, who usually stayed in their own room. The reason why they held that meeting was to sort out the last details for the plan, since the next day would mark Naruto's first journey back into Fire Country ever since he left it so many years ago. Konoha, it feels like a lifetime ago since I've last been there, Naruto said absent-mindedly. His thoughts were set on a few things he still remembered from his time as a Leaf citizen. The Hokage monument was one thing he could still picture in his mind, the rest was lost to him. He even forgot the crappy apartment where he used to live after he was kicked out of the orphanage. Are you sure you want to go through all this, honey? Mia asked him, as she placed a hand on her husband's shoulder, trying to bring him some comfort. It obviously worked since Naruto felt slightly better and seemed to relax a bit after that. You all know what the stakes are here. I can't afford to back out from this, there's no going back, Naruto replied with determination, reassuring the girls. If that's your wish then so be it, but you should know that the Leaf Jonin suspected something as he observed you fighting that arrogant fool earlier. His chakra signature greatly fluctuated when he saw you use that taijutsu form to destroy your opponent. Galatea reported her findings to the group. Arara, and here I thought that fighting stance was lost to anyone but you and your teacher. I guess some people aside from us still remember those moves. Kazuhana mused. When are you going to teach me that style, Naruto-kun? Rana asked in a childish tone. What? Naruto-kun promised me he would be training me next. Wait your turn, Rana. Stella said. Naruto had to chuckle at the pair, always enjoying Rana and her spontaneous behavior and reactions, while Stella was a lot more reserved and only spoke for herself once her friend/rival already did. Would you two stop that? We are in the middle of an important meeting. What do you plan to do, should they find out who you are before it's time to properly announce your return in the elemental nations? Miria said as she silenced the younger girls. You worry too much, my lovely Miria-chan. This style is not so easily grasped, and there are some special circumstances needed in order to learn it. That's why they can't counter nor copy it, even with their special eyes. Granted, I used to thinking that no one alive could possibly recognize it, but if they confront me about it, there are many ways around the truth without exposing ourselves or sensei too much. Naruto replied. What's that old fool doing anyway? It's been an eternity since we last heard of him. Mia asked. Ha ha, I'd like to know that as well, Mia-chan. He'll let us find him when he's ready to be found out. You know how he is anyway. There's one last thing I need to say before we stop for tonight. Naruto replied. What is it, Naruto-kun? Mia said. I'm sorry if I can't show signs of affection to any of you in public. You all know how I love you, but I can't let them use your relations to me in order to harm us. We will have to keep a low profile for a little bit longer. I hope you can forgive me. Naruto told the girls. They all looked at him as if he grew another head and then smiled. Now that's you who worry too much, my dear husband. Miria teased him back. We all followed you knowing your plan. You don't need to worry about such thing. As long as we know where your heart is, that's all what matters to us. Kazuhana added. Anyway, let's call it a night. The leaf neens are all sound asleep, and so should we. The road back to Konoha will be a long one. Galatea said as everyone nodded. She had to make sure no one would try to eavesdrop on their meeting, so she finally released her censor technique after that. Konohagakure, front gates. The trip back to the Hidden Leaf was every bit as they expected it to be, with Sasuke's continuous attempts to fight Naruto again, once he woke up. Apparently he didn't learn a thing from the fight, stating that his opponent had a couple of lucky cheap shots at him. Naruto humored him once or twice, always using the Monkey King's fist and frustrating the Hokage's disciple to no end as he couldn't counter nor copy the moves even with his Sharingan. Sakura also tried her chance at seducing the masked man again. Even with their mission of bringing back to the leaf successful, she was also frustrated that a man dared resist her womanly charms. It also motivated her to know the man easily bested Sasuke, one of the most promising shinobi of her village. Unfortunately for her, she failed again, under the amused eyes of the women from Naruto's crew. Kakashi and Sai remained quite discreet during the whole trip back, each of them having different things to report to their superiors about the blonde and his crew. Naruto thought Kakashi would try to approach him and learn where he had been taught the Monkey King's fist, but the gray-haired ninja did nothing of the sort. The group now stood in front of the imposing main gates of Konohagakure. Welcome to the Leaf, ladies and gentlemen, Kakashi announced. Konohagakure, front gates. Naruto's mind was assaulted with memories from his childhood as he walked to the village's gates with Team 7 and his crew. Everyone around was looking at him and the girls, since they did stand out quite a bit. It was certainly an uncommon sight, Naruto with his face mask and the white clothes being escorted by 3 pairs of women, 2 in front, 2 at his sides and 2 behind him. Mia and Kazuhana were in the front, in their perfectly identical black uniforms, and both had their katana strapped to their waist. Next were Stella and Rana walking at Naruto's side, also in matching uniforms. Theirs were light purple and were composed of a skirt and a blouse which had a black fox drawn on their shoulders. They didn't seem to hold any weapon. Finally, at the back were Miria and Galatea, in their dark gray uniforms with their large swords on their back. If Mia, Kazuhana or even Rana could be considered as beauties, their morphology was not so far from the Konoha women. Miria, Galatea and Stella, though, really stood out with their blonde hair and the silver eyes for the first 2. All 6 had the bodies of goddesses, which obviously caught the attention of many males along the way. Team 7, returning from a mission with guests, Hokage-sama will be expecting us, Kakashi announced to the Chunin guarding the gates. Seeing that everything was in order, the guards let the group through. They made their way toward the Hokage Tower, choosing to take the rooftops since they didn't need the extra attention they were already getting. Despite not being ninja, every member of Naruto's crew had no problem to follow Team 7 to their destination. The women held a grace in their movements that showed they did not receive any formal kunoichi training. Nevertheless, they had proven that they could perfectly travel at a ninja's pace during the trip back into Fire Country, never showing any sign of tiredness. As they were jumping from roof to roof, Naruto suddenly tripped and lost his balance, making him fall from a tall building. He was immediately helped by Rana and Stella while the other 4 stayed in their spots. Team 7 and especially Sasuke were surprised by this but chose to remain silent. Naruto jumped back on top of the building, saying he didn't pay attention to his footing, and then the group resumed their trip. It was midday and they could see several other Leaf Shinobi jumping around them. Some of them were curious and observed Naruto and his girls while others just went on their way, paying them no mind. Nevertheless, the military presence all around the village was a lot more pronounced than it was in Kirigakure. This was clearly an up-and-running shinobi village, strongly militarized, just as the rumors about Konohagakure said. Kage Tower. As they finally reached the Kage Tower, and with Team 7 being on a high-priority mission, the group could get a direct audience with the Hokage. The truth is that Danzo already knew they were coming. He had a team of ANBU following them as soon as they set foot in Konoha. Upon arriving in the waiting room before the Hokage's office, one ANBU team was waiting for them and directed Naruto and his escort toward the meeting room instead. The blonde took one last glance toward the office where he used to fool around with his Gigi, a room that was among the rare places in Konoha where he could feel safe. Looking around, he noticed that everyone was waiting for him to move. He took a second to regain his composure, and then followed after the ANBU team with the girls in tow. Council Room. The council room was located on the last floor of the same building, so it didn't really take that much time to reach it. The ANBU stopped at its doors, opening them for Naruto and his escort, closing them after the guests went through, and then standing in attention in front of them afterward. However, another platoon was also waiting for them inside the room, protecting the High Council. The room was pretty big. Seats were placed in a circle around the central area reserved to the guests, and they were organized in 4 levels. To the highest level, overseeing everyone below them, were the Hokage and his advisors, the elders. 3 people currently occupied those seats. Among them was Shimura Danzo, the Godame Hokage, and the elders were the shinobi and kunoichi from the same generation as him, Kohaku and Hamura. The next floor, just below the first one, was reserved to the shinobi council members. Among them were most of the clan heads, which obviously included Uchiha Sasuke, who went to take his seat between the Hyuga and the empty Senju seats. The only other empty seat was the Namake's one. It had remained empty for the last 21 years, ever since tragedy took away their last known member, Namake's Minato. An old law prevented it from being replaced by another family for at least 3 generations. That was done to make sure a dying clan was indeed dead before their seat was definitely removed. As such, the Senju seat was about to be removed and the Namake's one still had another 10 years before its expiration date. The 3rd floor was reserved to the civilian representatives. It was the most crowded one too. They had gained power by supporting Danzo's rise to power. Even if none of them realized they were manipulated by the Godame, they still held some power in the decisions concerning Konoha. The power of having a say in the governance of their village was what they always sought to get in the past, during the previous Kage's reigns, and that is what allowed Danzo to coexist peacefully with them up until now, even if it was only an illusion. Finally, at the ground level was the space reserved for the guests. The room was built that way, in order for the council to look down on their guests, a psychological way to establish dominance. That's precisely where Naruto and the girls were led to, having to look up to their hosts, to see the High Council of Konohagakure in all its glory. Team 7, returning from our mission, Hokage-sama. Kakashi announced as he, Sakura and Sai were standing near the doors. They were not the guests, nor did they have a right to seat in any seats within the room. Report. Danzo simply replied, not taking his eyes off Naruto and his girls. As per your orders, Team 7 went to Wave Country in order to extend the council's offer to the man named Kuro Kitsune that Team Enko wrote about in their reports. We made contact with our target 3 days after we left the village and, after a test of strength performed by your apprentice, Uchiha Sasuke, Kuro-san accepted to come here in person to negotiate the conditions of his contract with Konoha. Kakashi reported to the entire room. I see. What about your mission, Harino Sakura? Danzo asked. I'm sorry, I failed, Hokage-sama. Sakura replied, keeping her head down, not daring to look back at her leader nor to her mother and the civilian representatives. Failure was not easily accepted, either from Danzo nor from her mother, and she knew she would most likely hear about it again later. Naruto was starting to feel annoyed. They were speaking as if he was not even present in the room. He knew more or less what Sakura's mission was about, with the pink-haired kunoichi trying a few times to get inside his pants, never to succeed. By doing this, they most likely wanted to get a way to influence his decisions in the upcoming negotiations. Nevertheless, Naruto displayed a calm and collected behavior on the outside, not wanting to give in to his hosts. It was fair game since he kinda did the same thing with the 2 Konoha teams that visited his ship after all. Welcome to Konohagakure. I am Shimura Danzo, Godame Hokage, and this is our village's High Council. May I ask who is traveling with you, Kuro-san, and is there any other name we could call you? Danzo finally spoke, acknowledging Naruto's presence. The blonde narrowed his eyes at the hidden meaning behind Danzo's question. Two strategic points were raised: his true name as well as the identities of the girls. This man was certainly skilled in the arts of interrogation. Naruto knew he would have to be careful in his answers around this person. A name is of no consequence in the matter at hand. You may call me whatever you wish, even that name in the bingo book is good enough. The women around me are my personal escort, they act as my bodyguards as well as my counselors. Now proceed with your proposal. I have only heard part of what it entailed and came here in person to see for myself. Naruto replied in a neutral tone, not betraying any emotions behind his mask. Whispers were heard all around, as the representatives studied the man in the center of the room. It was certainly uncommon to have someone not bending to Danzo's every wish. This time, Danzo was the one narrowing his only visible eye toward Naruto. This was indeed a man not used to being told what to do, nor was he stupidly answering questions with no control over his emotions, very much unlike his own apprentice, Danzo had to admit. You will answer the questions Hokage-sama asked you, or face the consequences. The shinobi rep with a haircut in the shape of a daka suddenly yelled, confirming his master's previous opinion about his lack of control over his emotions. Did you receive some kind of a head trauma from the fight you lost to me, Uchiha? Or maybe my hearing is failing me, as I almost heard you say that you were demanding things from me. I will now remind the honorable members of the council that anything you say within these walls shall be used in the consolidation of the contract you so much desired with me. Naruto replied. Very well, what do you want, Kuro-san? No one is to speak up again without being invited to, am I clear? Those who disobey will face the consequences. Danzo spoke the last part of his sentence while looking at Sasuke, clearly signifying him to shut the hell up. The Uchiha seethed in anger and remained silent, not wanting to cross his master. Straight to the point, I see, fine by me. I want a copy from your scroll of forbidden kinjutsu. Before any of you start yelling in outrage, let me say this. You have nothing to offer me that I don't already have, that is the price of my services, and I'm not settling down for anything else than this. Naruto said, looking straight into Danzo's eye. The entire room turned silent, waiting in anticipation for their Hokage's reply to such a demand. The war hawk never broke eye contact with Naruto, studying his every move as if the blonde was a prey for him to feast on. Let's imagine I would allow that deal to happen. It's only fair you tell me what you seek inside that scroll. After all, that's one of our most precious treasure. It holds many secrets that were put in there by my predecessors. Put in the wrong hands, it could in turn become one formidable weapon against us. Danzo said, not caring about the looks of disbelief from the council members around him. Believe it or not, I have more gold than I could possibly spend in several lifetimes. I once lived as a slave and shall not allow anyone to ever become mine. Finally, I'm not interested in friendship or love, those are useless emotions, not fit for a man in my position. Power and knowledge, however, are things I seek. A man in your position should understand this better than anyone else. That scroll does represent the ultimate knowledge your village has to offer, and that's why I want a copy of it. Naruto replied. I see. Before I give you an answer, tell me, what would Konoha gain from having you as a partner? What difference would your participation bring in our conflict against Odo, Kumo, and IWA? I will need more than your profile in the bingo book, or you defeating my student to grant you access to our most sacred scroll. Danzo told him. Well, for starters, how do you even plan to win a war against an enemy that owns at the very least 4 Jinchuriki, while you only have the Ichibi, a highly unstable host if my spies are accurate? I heard that you even lost your own Jinchuriki 15 years ago, and while I don't know why or how it happened, I can see that the odds don't look so nice from your point of view. Well, I am the one who killed Yagura, Jinchuriki of the Sanbai, so I think my help would be greatly appreciated in that department. Naruto started, seeing many head nodding at his reasoning. I know for a fact that you are not only facing 2 of the great 5 villages, but that minor village of Odogekure as well. Orochimaru was once among the very best of your warriors, since he and his teammates were one of the reasons for your village's successes in the previous shinobi wars. Said team is currently MIA, in fact you haven't heard of them in decades. Your opponent, however, has several veteran shinobi in its ranks while your side also lacks in that field. Me and those who fight alongside with me have years of experience in fighting such opponents. If you want a proof to back my claim up, anyone among my escort could easily best any of your elite guards that are currently hiding in the walls of this room. Naruto added. We shall see for ourselves then. I'll consider the deal if you are victorious, otherwise you will all perish for making me lose my time. The Godame announced. Danzo felt insulted by this, yet, his curiosity compelled him to really consider the blonde's words. He silently raised a hand and then snapped his fingers. Not even a second later, 6A and Bu leaped out of the walls and went to target each of Naruto's girls individually. Naruto nodded to the women, as the blonde chose to sit this one out. Fight only to disable, no killing blows. he said with a tone void of any emotion. Stella and Rana stepped in front of Naruto. Seeing the two young unarmed girls, the elite shinobi didn't stop and charged in, ready to go through them in order to get to Naruto. Irinbar said. Rana and Stella yelled, as the room glowed red and strange markings appeared all around the walls and the ground. The ANBU that were already in the air instantly fell down on the floor while the others that had yet to move found themselves stuck on their feet. What the hell? Is that Fuinjutsu? Why can't we move? Yelled the shinobi, as they tried to move from their spot, not understanding what prevented them from doing so. The two younger girls from Naruto's crew then created weapons for themselves, literally out of thin air, with Stella summoning twin warglaives while Rana had armored gloves and boots. Excel turn! They both yelled, as they moved toward their opponent at extraordinary speed and started to disable them left and right. It only took but one split second and their battle was already over. The 6 ANBU that went against them were knocked out, and they never even saw where each hit came from. Silence reigned once more inside the council chamber as everyone, with no exception, had their eyes wide open while staring at the two youngest warriors from Naruto's guards. They had just taken down 6 of Konoha's own elite forces without even breaking a sweat. Even Danzo was stunned as he saw the battle, right in front of him. Even more surprising than the fact that those ANBU had lost, what really impressed the Godame Hokage was that those girls' ability, whatever it was, also prevented him and everyone else in the audience to move. Only when they had returned at their leader's side that their technique was lifted. What was that? I've never seen anything like this. Was that some kind of a bloodline that allowed them to stop everyone's movements? The Hokage asked Naruto with excitement in his voice. He was already thinking about the possible applications for such a power against his enemies, and how to force the blonde into marrying those girls with shinobi from the leaf. Yes, something very much like that. Naruto stayed as vague as possible but started to frown when he saw the Hokage's calculative gaze on Stella and Rana. I will accept the deal with one additional condition: those two warriors are to marry shinobi from my village. I have very suitable candidates for them, such as my disciple. As the sole heir to his clan, he has the possibility to take more than one wife. Maybe we could. Danzo was already planning in details a schedule for Stella and Rana to produce children with the same abilities when Naruto interrupted him. Not happening, old man, those two are already engaged to very powerful allies of mine. Anyway, the ball is in your camp, my original offer stays. Will you agree to the deal or not, Shimura Danzo? Naruto said, not bothering with honorifics or names. He had to hold back a lot in order not to snap and kill everyone in that room when Danzo tried to take Rana and Stella from him as if they were mere objects for him to dispose of. The War Hawk remained impassive at Naruto's ultimatum. His silence was starting to get annoying for the blonde, when Galatea suddenly pulled him back, as her eyes flashed from their original silver state to a golden color, as she channeled Yuki into them. He's trying something against us with his hidden eye behind those bandages, she announced as Danzo's only visible eye widened. He immediately stopped what he was trying to do, stood up, and then spoke again. It would have been so much easier for you, had you remained oblivious. Now I fear that things will get more complicated for you, much more complicated. It would have been easier with your cooperation, but I guess we'll have to force your troops to obey us, and they will, once they see their leader is our prisoner. You are a fool for coming in here with so few guards to protect you. No matter how strong you all are, you cannot hope to get out of this place alive. Danzo finally announced, as he put a hand on a secret seal under his desk, and ANBU instantly started to appear all around the room. Don't worry for your women, I'll take good care of them. They will all help me restore the Uchiha clan by strengthening its power with their bloodlines, Sasuke said with a smirk as he went to stand behind his master while ogling the women. No one could see the smile Naruto sported behind his mask as he looked around him. He went to stand in front of Rana and Stella, holding them back as they were already trying to jump out and raise hell. He gave his 4 wives a nod, and then turned back toward Danzo and Sasuke. Did you really think I came in here, risking mine and my guards' lives, without an emergency exit strategy? Show him what I'm talking about, girls, Naruto said. Kori no Sekai/Kamikakushi. Galatea and Miria called out as they launched their combination attack in order to stun and disable the first ANBU teams that tried to get closer to their group. As soon as they were done, Mia and Kazuhana moved forward. Ikaros, Shinso, Mia announced as she jumped in the air and reached out for her katana. The audience never saw her unsheath her blade before performing her swing. All they saw was Mia, landing near Naruto while removing her hand from her sword. Just a second after that, the room started to shift as a clean cut appeared all around the walls, just between the elder and the shinobi level. Chire, Senbin Sakura. Kazuhana's move finished the work as a gush of wind suddenly appeared and obliterated the walls, just above the cut that Mia had just performed, granting the entire room a panoramic vision of their village. Naruto did a single ram hand sign and the entire village started to shake as a tremendous explosion destroyed the Hokage monument. The blonde then started to walk toward the exit of the council chamber. That's one of the many presents I brought with me. Did you really thought I lost my footing on that rooftop earlier? If you did, then you are more of a fool than I thought you to be. Now, I think we're not welcome in this village anymore, so I propose that we leave peacefully, unless you want the next explosion to happen in a more populated or strategic place of your village? Naruto spoke to Danzo. Neither the War Hawk nor the several shinobi working under him dared to move. They had lost, and they knew it. They stood, helplessly, as the blonde masked man and his escort left the room, making their way toward the village's gates. Yeah, that's what I thought were Naruto's last words as he left the council chamber. Kanehigakure, Hokage office. Papers were flying everywhere as Danzo trashed his own office, cursing the masked man who had just humiliated him, in front of the whole council no less. Not even a day had passed ever since the meeting. Things were slowly getting back to normal, with the people of Konoha getting used to not have the Hokage monument inside their village anymore. There were only material damages. No lives were lost during the explosion that changed the face of the village. It was too big of an event to possibly be covered up by some petty lies. Much to Danzo's regret, the whole world would soon know what that damn blonde had done to them. Unforgivable, he came in here with only 6 female guards as his escort. They had him cornered and he still managed to escape. It wouldn't be so embarrassing had he run away with his tail between his legs, but no, he leisurely walked out, never looking back and never worried about anyone going after him. That was the worst. They had to watch him slowly leave the village after he destroyed its symbol of power, the monument dedicated to their previous leaders. The reason why he was allowed to pass, even with that ultimate humiliation, was because he told them that the Hokage mountain was only one of the several targets that were booby-trapped with explosives. He had threatened to detonate the others if they made any attempt to block his retreat, and seeing the power behind the first explosion, no one wanted to bet on a possible bluff from his part. Nevertheless, Danzo was the one who let him go, as the leader, so he was responsible for this. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on one's point of view, it was indeed a bluff from the blonde. They found the burnt remains from several dozens of exploding tags laying all around the Hokage monument, but nowhere else around the village. He tricked them, remaining as calm as ever with his poker face on, and nothing from Danzo's experience nor his hidden powers had allowed him to see through that bluff. The Godame was interrupted in his thinking when a poof of smoke inside his office announced the arrival of the people he had summoned. He took a second to regain his composure, and then went back into his emotionless leader mode as he spoke with the 2 new occupants inside his office. Kakashi, Shikaku, report. Danzo barked out as his 2 subordinates appeared. Shikaku stepped forward first, heavily sighed, and then started to speak. I reviewed all the data we had about the incidents that happened yesterday, from the moment those intruders came into the village to the time when they left, directly after their meeting with us in the council chamber. Shikaku said. Stop beating around the bush, tell me what you found. Danzo yelled, still angered at the blonde. It's just as he said, Hokage-sama. According to the witnesses and several observation camera we had in that zone, I think I have a good grasp of what he did. It happened on that rooftop where he seemingly tripped and fell. What actually happened is that the moment he touched the ground, he formed several bunshin and then used henge to camouflage them, using the dust from his fake fall to cover up his tracks. His timing was perfect, and since it's a crowded district, those clones easily slipped through any patrol we may have had in that area. The rest after that is quite obvious. They made their way to the monument and discreetly planted the tags. Shikaku finished his report and then stepped back, leaving the spot to Kakashi. As you ordered, a strike force has been dispatched in order to catch the masked man and his group before they leave Fire Country. I chose the members myself for that mission, and, judging by the speed they previously showed during our journey back from Wave, it shouldn't be a problem for our tracking team to intercept them. Kakashi reported to Danzo. Who is in that team and who did you pick as their leader? Danzo asked. Given that most of our forces are deployed near the borders, I had to go with our younger shinobi. The team is composed by Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, Hyuga Niji, Inuzuka Kiba, and finally Uchiha Sasuke as their sole jonin and team leader. I also took the liberty to send out another backup team of Chunin after them, just in case. Kakashi answered. What's the target status and last known position? Danzo asked again. Apparently, instead of going east toward Wave as we thought they would, they are going west. The dog summon I sent with them just reported that they were near Tenzaka-gai as we speak. Kakashi reported. Very well, if you got nothing more to add, then the both of you are dismissed. Danzo said. Actually, Hokage-sama, it's about a particular taijutsu form I saw the masked man perform against your disciple, Kakashi started. The silver-haired Jonin then told his leader how Naruto fought in his battle against Sasuke, using an ancient taijutsu style that has not been seen in decades. Actually, it was something only those close to the previous Hokage knew about. Fire Country, Tanzakugai City. Naruto and the girls had just gone through the city of Tanzakugai, located southwest of Konoha. It was still midday and the sun was high in the sky. The temperature was quite high and made it harder for them to run. They had indeed been running non-stop for the last 24 hours, only taking short breaks for their meal or more personal occupations. The group didn't stop either when they reached the small town, preferring to go around and keep a low profile. Naruto-kun, why can't we stop for a little bit? I know Konoha is trailing us, but even if they did catch up to us, we can easily overpower them. Rana whined. She really wanted to visit that city they had just gone through. For once I have to agree with her, Naruto-kun. I'm not really tired, but I would have liked to visit the town we just crossed. Is there any reason we're being so cautious? Stella added, not used to agree with Rana. Girls, Mia started to say. However, Naruto stepped in first. The truth is, he didn't tell the two of them the more complicated details of his plan. Only his wives knew about them. The reason for that was simple. He needed those two to have genuine reactions when the Council of Konohagakure was trying to enslave them. The result was quite good actually, as Rana and Stella were pretty pissed at Danzo and Sasuke for their ridiculous offer to trade the Forbidden Scroll for them. Naruto was not sure if they would have played their part so well, had they been made aware of the whole plan beforehand. Of course, he knew Danzo would try something like that once he sees what Rana or Stella could do. Sasuke was also very easy to read. I'm sorry, Rana and Stella, I have not been entirely honest with you about our trip in Konoha. It is linked to the reason why we can't take breaks. I will explain everything to the both of you if you let me, but only once we've reached our destination. Naruto explained to them. Is this about the scroll you have on your back? Stella asked. Ever since they left the leaf, Naruto had indeed been running while carrying a pretty big scroll on his back. The scroll was blue, and it had a big swirl drawn on it. Yes, that's the one thing I can't let them know about. Before you ask, no, I can't steal it because it is protected against such actions to prevent anyone from stealing it. The only reason why my clones so easily took it out from that village was because of the confusion from the explosion, and also since they had their eyes on us, and not him. Naruto replied, getting nods from the two younger girls. Let's pick up the pace. I can sense 5 chakra signatures behind us. We still have time, but they're getting closer. Galatea announced. Anyone we know of? Naruto asked. Yes, the Hyuga and Uchiha that visited our ship are among that group. I don't know the other 3 though. Galatea replied. With the tracking team. The Konoha tracking team was also running at full speed, using their knowledge of Fire Country. It was the one thing they had over their target, apart from their speed, which was only a bit faster than the masked man's team. Years of mission throughout the country have allowed them to know which path to take in order to catch up faster with their opponents. They were running in a line formation with Kiba at the front, using his superior tracking senses to follow Naruto's group by their smell. Behind him was the team leader Sasuke, with his Sharingan eyes that looked out for traps. Third was Shikamaru, the tactician and coordinator of the team. His jutsu could be either used as a defense or an offense, depending on the situation. Fourth was Choji, heavy hitter of the group. He would move according to orders given to him from Shikamaru. Last was Niji, covering for their entire rear with his Byakugan and its wide range of detection. Shikamaru sighed as he looked at the group. Sure, it was composed by very promising shinobi, but there is more than just individual raw skills, especially for this type of mission. If Kiba, Choji and him were friends or at least friendly with each other for having gone through the academy together, Niji and Sasuke were the problems. Sasuke was the one who decided on the formation, with some inputs from him of course. However, the Uchiha would most certainly keep all the glory for himself, should the mission result in a success. How far are they from our position, Kiba? Sasuke asked the Inuzuka Chunin. The smell is strong, 1 hour top, if we continue at this pace and they keep theirs. Kiba answered. Judging by the direction they are taking, they are most likely heading for river country, Choji said. What made them go that way? According to Team 7, they left their ship on the other end of the country, near Wave. Niji wondered out loud. There's something wrong with all this. I know that they are aware of our group chasing them, since they didn't take any break nor did they deviate from their path. They are also going west instead of east, where their ship is docked. Even if we were to assume that they hoped, by going that way, to avoid being pursued any further than the borders of Fire Country, there were many other directions to take, especially those leading to our enemies such as Oto or Kumo. Shikamaru analyzed, getting nods from Kiba and Choji while Niji remained neutral and Sasuke just dismissed his warning as the group continued to chase after its target without any plan. With Naruto's group. The blonde and his group had just crossed the borders of river country. It had been 1 hour since Galatea detected the Konoha group when she suddenly stopped running. The group saw that and decided to stop as well, worried about her sudden change of pace. Naruto was the first to reach her, as he landed beside the blonde woman. "What's the matter, Galatea-chan?" Naruto asked the censor of his group. "They're almost here, we have 3 minutes before they arrive," Galatea answered her husband. "We have almost arrived at our destination, let's try to outrun them for a little bit more. We'll be fine once we reach the main river, do not engage them, just try to defend and run," Naruto told them. They ran like this for another 2 minutes. Naruto looked around to saw that his companions were really getting tired, even the more experienced ones. The younger girls looked exhausted, from all the running they had been doing for the last 24 hours. It was at this moment that the river finally came into view at the horizon, giving Naruto and his group a moment of relief. It was short-lived as the Konoha team also appeared behind them, slightly winded too but ready to fight nevertheless. Naruto's team continued to run, as he threw out what looked like smoke bombs toward the Konoha shinobi. "Are you that dumb? These things have no effects on my Sharingan, I'd bet even the Hyuga can see through it with his lower-grade Dijutsu," Sasuke yelled as he ran straight into the smoke cloud as if it weren't there. Neji narrowed his eyes at the blatant disrespect for his family's Dijutsu, but he chose to follow him in the smoke screen anyway. Kiba, Choji and Shikamaru looked at each other before shrugging and going after their leader as well. "I can see them, straight ahead, they are running toward the main river," Neji called out as he and Sasuke were slowly but surely catching up to Naruto and his girls. "Wait, damn it!" Shikamaru shouted too late, as the Hyuga and Uchiha kept on running. The Nara air couldn't help but find this cloud of smoke weird. First, it didn't dissipate and kept on producing more smoke. Secondly, the smoke was green and not black, as the standard ones he had seen used. Finally, the purpose for that masked man to use that screen was strange as well. If he knew Sasuke and Neji would see him with or without the smoke, why would he use it? Furthermore, one would expect him to stay and fight them inside the smoke instead of continuing to run, in a straight line no less. The Leaf Chunin took some more steps when his eyes suddenly snapped open and he pulled his two friends back forcefully. The strength behind his pull and the fact they were both running at their full speed made Kiba and Choji momentarily lose their breath as they fell on their butt. "What the hell, Shikamaru?" Kiba yelled as he slowly stood up, followed by Choji who had more troubles due to his weaker stamina. Shikamaru was about to answer when a tremendous explosion shook the entire area. The three of them then saw two blurs as Sasuke and Neji were propelled back from whatever had hit them. The two Dijutsu users also slowly stood back, covered in injuries from the first explosion as more explosions erupted all around them. None of them could spot the origin of those attacks. All they saw were small black round rocks, flying at great speed toward them and devastating the ground as they landed. They regrouped with the other three of their team as the bombardment continued. "What the hell is that?" Sasuke yelled as he saw more projectiles landing in front and around them. "It's coming from the sea. I can't determine its origin, but their paths suggest they come from there. Small black rocks, launched from the open seas, Doton ninjutsu? But who could launch such long-range attacks?" Neji pondered out loud. "So much for the all-seeing eyes of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. Anyway, let's retreat," Shikamaru started to say when Sasuke interrupted him. "Are you crazy? They are right in front of us. As the commanding officer, I order you to continue," the young Jonin yelled as his teammates looked back at him with disapproving eyes. Kiba was about to argue when Neji suddenly yelled, "Take cover, the next one is landing right here." The Hyuga prodigy shouted and leaped backward. However, he was the only one quick enough to do so as he saw the others still rooted there. He saw in slow motion as the rock approached his team. On board the Musashi. Standing on the deck of another ship from the same class as the one Naruto traveled with, was the one and only Sarutobi Hiruzen. Gone were the eternal clothes the people from Konoha saw him with. He now wore his shinobi clothes that made him known throughout the elemental nations as the Kami no Shinobi. With him was an entire crew of men and women attending the ship, and the source of the Konoha team's current problem, the ship's cannons. What Neji thought to be Doton ninjutsu were in fact mechanical weapons that fired those projectiles that were currently stocked on the ship's deck. "Continue to target the green smoke, that's Naruto's signal," Sarutobi called as he looked at the field with a telescope. He saw the blonde and his women making their way toward them on top of Whale's summons that Naruto most likely called out. He couldn't see who was pursuing his student with the distance between them, but what he saw next surprised him. There was a direct hit coming, but it was blocked at the last moment, as a wall of sand suddenly appeared all around and above the pursuers. "Well, that's to be expected of them to make a move. I wonder if Danzo is responsible for this," Hiruzen wondered as Naruto and the girls finally boarded the Musashi. Hold fire! The old man yelled as Naruto and his girls walked to him. Hi sensei, it's been a long time, thanks for the save and the lift, Naruto said as everyone on the deck stood in attention when they saw him. On board the Musashi. The Musashi, a warship armed with a dozen cannons and capable of housing up to 100 men, departed from River Country's shores, just after they got their passengers on board. The men and women from its crew knew what to do, from its maintenance to the different tasks that needed to be performed to accommodate the guests, so Hiruzen was quite relaxed as he went to speak with his former disciple. Naruto was leisurely sunbathing on the deck of the Musashi. The girls had all gone to sleep after the exhausting trip they had just taken. He would have normally joined them, but he had things to speak of that couldn't wait, with his former teacher. Naruto may have been the supreme commander of the fleet, as he was fully reminded when all the men and women who saw him bowed and saluted their leader. However, he had an absolute faith in his captain's skills and waited for Hiruzen to finish with his duties without interfering before the two of them could discuss privately. I take it your mission was a success, judging by the additional friends you brought with you back in River Country? Hiruzen asked, as he took a seat near Naruto. That's correct, sensei. I got to admit though, I didn't think they would chase us this far, even inside a foreign country. Pretty sure good old Danzo didn't ask the permission from the daimyo to send his troops inside these lands, Naruto replied. It still amazed me they let that old fool take the hat. I was sure either Jiraiya or Tsunade would take it, and in the event they didn't, I really thought Kakashi would step up, but I guess I was wrong, the older man said without a hint of remorse. It seems like you don't care about the fate of Konoha. It was still your responsibility not that long ago. Don't you have any afterthoughts, especially after seeing what it became? Naruto asked. This was something he always wondered, whether or not the old man regretted his choice in leaving the village 10 years ago to go look for him. Let me tell you something, my predecessors, the Shodame and Nidame, both died young, leaving behind them their legacies and a mission to me, their successor, to protect the villagers and the next generation. I, in turn, did the same with your father, but we both know what became of it, so I had to retake the hat for a time since the village was in ruins. When I felt the village was at peace again, I decided to trust in the next generation again, trust in their will of fire, so I stepped down and went to accomplish one last mission, one I had received from another Kage, you father. They should have stood up and not let someone like Danzo, a phantom of the past, seize the power. Their will of fire died down, and all that happens to them from there is not my responsibility anymore, Hiruzen said. I see, I guess it makes sense, but what about your family? It's been 10 years since you last saw any of them. Why chose me over your son or grandson? Don't misunderstand me, I really appreciate all the things you did for me, I'm just curious, Naruto asked. It's just as you said, they are together and can depend on each other. Konohamaru, like his uncle, is being treated like a VIP just because he's related to me while you get my point, the old man replied. He then took notice of the scroll strapped to his student's back. So that's it. The Uzumaki Sacred Scroll, a record of all the knowledge created during the reign of the Uzumaki clan and the reason you risk exposure to Konoha? Hiruzen asked, still eyeing it. This was the first time he ever saw it. Naruto's mother and Mito Uzumaki before her were very secretive about it. All he knew was that it contained everything the Uzumaki clan ever created, in terms of technological or jutsu advances. It could have been enough to earn the interest of any leader in the world, since their knowledge in the Fuinjutsu field was quite impressive. However, Naruto was not seeking the scroll for that purpose. He was told by Hiruzen about his Uzumaki origins and also that some others like him sharing the blood of his ancestors may still be alive. Indeed, after the destruction of their village, Yuzushiogakure, the survivors fled in several directions, trying to escape from their enemy. Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's mother, was not among them since she was sent early on to the Leaf in order to live with Mito. According to Hiruzen, the older woman was obsessed with finding survivors from her clan, and, as the head of the Senju clan, she devoted a lot of time and resources into that quest. Hiruzen thought the scroll could also contain the record of her findings. Naruto was not back here in the elemental nations for power nor revenge. He was here to find out whether or not he still had people he could call his family, sharing the same ancestors as him. This was a long shot and he knew it, but growing up alone, family was the one thing he respected above all. Of course, he had formed his own family over time, but in the event someone was still out there, alone or suffering like he did, he wanted to be there for that person. His new family and the people currently following his lead understood that, and came with him knowing the risks. It's got several seals protecting it against stealing or unauthorized reading. First there's the anti-seal protection, a classic one. Then it gets more complicated, a anti-genjutsu protection, against the use of henge to hide it most likely. Naruto started to analyze the scroll. Mito sure was someone that knew how to protect her possessions, Hiruzen said with a chuckle as Naruto continued to study the scroll. Next comes the truly interesting part. There is an active blood seal, the variant of the classic blood analyzing one. Only a living Uzumaki with a regular heartbeat will be able to unlock the scroll by applying his or her blood on that seal. This was done most likely to protect it against anyone who would have stolen the blood of an Uzumaki. Furthermore, any interference due to external threat, if someone is somehow forcing an Uzumaki to open the lock, will be detected and blocked. The same applies to someone on the run, be it an Uzumaki or not. The scroll can only be opened by someone not running away or forced to do it, Naruto said. No wonder it's still safe to this day, even with Danzo in command for more than a decade. I never tried to open it, but somehow I can tell my old comrade Danzo tried with everything he had, only to fail. Where did you find it anyway? Was it still stashed in the Hokage vault? The old man said. Yes, and with your instructions and them focused on me and the girls in the council room, it was really easy to retrieve it. They really left the same defenses and patrol rotations as in the past. I'm seriously starting to wonder if it really was necessary to create a diversion in the first place. The blonde answered his sensei. Alright then, what are you waiting for? You aren't on the run anymore, and you do match all the other requirements needed for someone to open that scroll. No matter what you find in that scroll, you already have a family and friends that love you. Whether or not you are the last Uzumaki on Earth doesn't change who you truly are and what you achieved on your own over the years. The captain of the Musashi told his fleet commander, seeing him hesitate. The blonde nodded to his teacher and then cut his finger a bit, in order to draw some blood for the seal. He then held the scroll and let it analyze his pulse and blood for some time. During all this, Hiruzen looked anxious for his student. Sure, he told him that it was fine and all, but he was still worried for Naruto. After some time, a clicking sound could be heard from the seal, and it seemed like a lock just opened. Naruto pulled his hand back and both master and student looked as the scroll finally snapped open in a puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared out, 3 smaller scrolls appeared, each had different markings on them. The first had the word Jutsu written on it, the second had technology, while the last one had Uzumaki on it. Naruto put the first 2 aside and obviously went to check the third one first, using his blood again to open it. The blonde quickly scanned its content, and then smiled at Hiruzen, who was looking at him the whole time. This is everything Nito and my mother found out about the few Uzumaki refugees who managed to escape the destruction of Uzushigakure. It's organized in several family trees, each one retracing those families back to their roots in Yuzu. I'm on the same one as my mother. There's Mito too, with your former student Tsunade in the same as hers. Confirmed deaths are marked with a cross over their names. Unfortunately, most of the names are crossed and date to the previous generation, the same as my mother's. I'm one of the very few from my generation, Naruto announced. I take it by your tone and smirk that you found out you are not alone, Sarutobi asked him. You are correct, sensei. There are still 4 names that are not crossed out in the register, mine and 3 others. 2 of them are from my generation, while the remaining 1 is from my mother's generation. It's not really giving specific names for them, only their lineage and probable location, Naruto replied as he studied Mito's and his mother's researches on their clan members. I see. I'm glad for you, but don't forget it has not been updated since your mother died. They may or may not be alive anymore. Everything is possible in the ninja world. Don't get your hopes too high for now. Anyway, where will you be going first then? Hiruzen said to him. What can you tell me about Yugakure? Naruto asked with a smirk. Rice Country, Otogakure. A week passed since the events that took place in Konoha, with the news of the team that destroyed the Hokage monument spreading throughout the world. It was impossible for Danzo and his goons to cover up the whole event, since the damn thing could be seen from miles away. Only few people knew the truth about it, namely the council. It was decided to pass it as a terrorist attack instead of Naruto bluffing them, and calmly walking away from the village without anyone stopping him. Of course, the blonde was still held responsible for the bombing. The council meeting was erased from the records and they made it look like he attacked Konoha without a reason. One man was very interested by such news. Anything that made Konoha look like fools caught that man's attention. Orochimaru, former student of the Sandame Hokage, was quite eager to meet the man who brought Danzo to his knees. He had to hold off on his plans to destroy the leaf 10 years ago, with the Sandame suddenly disappearing and Danzo taking his place. The War Hawks wasn't as easygoing as the third when it came to security. As such, it was much harder to infiltrate the leaf than during the previous Hokage's reign. Orochimaru remained patient and forged alliances left and right, waiting for the right time to strike against his former village. Kabuto, have you found anything of use on that man? Orochimaru asked his second in command. In addition to what we already knew of him from his profile in the bingo book, I was also able to discover that the whole story about him attacking the leaf with no reason is a lie, made up to hide the fact that they couldn't stop him. I have many witnesses saying that he was escorted back into the village prior to the explosion by a team of Leaf Chunin and Jonin. He left with his bodyguards soon after the explosion with no one following him. Whatever motivated him to attack them happened during the meeting he had with them after his arrival. He must have anticipated their conversation and went in prepared. Kabuto answered. Of course he did. No one would attack the supposedly strongest village in the elemental nations with no good reason. That man is very interesting. Have you any clues to where he could be right now? The Otokage asked. Not precisely, I'm afraid. I lost all track of him in river country when he escaped from the Leaf's pursuit team. He apparently left using the rivers that led to the sea, and from there he could really be absolutely everywhere in the continent, or even around it. Kabuto explained. We may try our luck in Utikure, since it has one of those port towns that his fleet uses for their business. The only other one I know of is in Wave, and I doubt he will show up there again for some time since it's the one he came from when he was escorted back into Fire Country by Konoha. The man added. Very well, you will send Tayuya to find out more clues about him and his group. She comes from there, so it might help. Orochimaru replied with a smirk as Kabuto nodded and left the room to go execute his master's orders. Wind Country, Sunigakure. Shikamaru opened his eyes as he woke up in a room that he didn't recognize. He then remembered that he was not in his own house. As a matter of fact, he was not even in his own village. They had been escorted back into Wind Country by the Suna team that saved them from the last attack from the masked man forces in River Country. Going backward into Fire Country was not an option, as the daimyo had sent his forces to check out the area where countless explosions were heard. Given that they did not receive the permission to cross, much less fight, into these lands, they had to escape from another embarrassing humiliation and decided to follow after the Suna team. They would lay low for a few days and then discreetly go back home, where Danzo would most likely yell at them for failing. All in all, he wasn't that sad to not go home directly. The Nara heir also knew that the backup team that was following them would not go through the borders of River Country as they did, albeit under the orders of Sasuke. Speaking of Devil, Sasuke and also Neji were not at the top of their game since they suffered injuries from whatever jutsu the enemy was using. Without the help of those Sunanins, they would most likely be dead right now. Shikamaru then thought about the very jutsu that saved their lives. A wall of sand appeared around them and blocked the black rocks that were thrown at them. He immediately recognized the one responsible for that, Sabaku no Gaara, son of the Kazakage and Jinchuriki of the Ichibi no Tanuki. The mind of the genius from Konoha instantly understood what had happened. Their Hokage must have asked them to render assistance, since Wind Country wasn't that far away, most likely using one of their fastest communication bird in order to relay the message. Sunigakure was their historical ally and would not refuse a support mission from them since their economy was more or less in their hands. Danzo knew about their difficulties to get more support from their daimyo, and used it fully to his advantage. He sent them missions, the more dangerous and less lucrative ones, in exchange for their support, and as such, Konoha became a huge part of Suna's economy. The Kazakage knew Danzo had spies everywhere, and would immediately crush them if they chose to disobey or betray them. Shikamaru also knew Danzo tried to pit Gaara against the masked man, in an attempt to fish out more about his abilities, since he was supposedly the one who killed Yugura, the previous Kage of the Hidden Mist, and Jinchuriki of the Sanbai. Unfortunately for Danzo, the Suna team was too late, and their target had already escaped. The plan would have most likely worked had they arrived a little bit earlier, since that Gaara character seemed highly unstable, and according to Kiba, his sand reeked of blood. The Jinchuriki would have certainly tried to attack the masked man, if given the possibility. Shikamaru was interrupted in his musing by the arrival of Choji and Kiba in his room. Hey Shikamaru, are you ready? The Kazakage wants to see us before we head back home. Neji and Sasuke's injuries are fully healed, so we can go now, Choji said as he entered the room with some food in his hands. The Nara sighed and then joined his team for their meeting with the Kage. Hot Springs Country, Northern Shores. Naruto and the girls were on the deck of the Musashi, everyone fully rested and ready to disembark. Hiruzen suddenly appeared from the captain's quarters and came to them with a small book they all recognized. It was a newly edited version of the bingo book, and seeing his face, they could all take a guess at whose profile was updated. Naruto took the book from his sensei and opened it. At his page it read. Name, unknown. Nickname, Kuro Kitsune. Age, 20 to 25. Rank S. Status, unknown, at least Jonin. Attributes, Kenjutsu, S, Ninjutsu, S, and Taijutsu, S. Affinities, wind, fire, lightning, earth. Bloodline unknown. Description: blonde hair, blue eyes, see picture. Wears a face mask to keep his identity hidden. Holder of the whale's summoning contract. Defeated S-rank Kiriyande Mizukage, Yugura the Jinchuriki of the Sanbai. Destroyed the Hokage monument in Konohagakure. Action, engage with caution. Bounty, 50 million ryo in Kanahigakure and Sunigakure, dead or alive. 25 million ryo in Otogakure, alive. Well, I guess they put in everything they knew about me since our visit in the leaf. Still, I'm a bit surprised at the interest of Otogakure for me. Naruto mused as he passed the book around. Be careful with Orochimaru, Naruto. He is as dangerous as he is cunning. I should have finished him when I had the chance all those years ago. Hiruzen said with regret in his voice. Don't worry, Sensei, I will. Keep an eye on Wave Country and the Yamato for me, will you? The blonde reassured his teacher and then left the ship with the girls. The Musashi left not long after that and made its way to Wave Country. Hot Spring Country, Yugakure. Tayuya and her team were currently crossing through Hot Spring Country, not even bothering with camouflage or anything of the sort, since Orochimaru had received permission from the daimyo to travel the lands as he wished with his armies. The leader of Otogakure had in exchange promised to leave the main village and capital alone, Yugakure. There was not much that could be done, since Kumo was pushing from the other side of the borders and Konoha would not move, fearing to expose themselves to both Oto and Kumo. This resulted in Hot Spring Country becoming a fake neutral zone in which shinobi from both Oto and Kumo could freely move without questioning from the local authorities. As such, the redhead deemed it unnecessary to disguise herself until she and her team reached the port town. Speaking about that squad currently traveling with her, they were Kintsuchi, Kotoheim, Kajiro, and Sasami Fuma. Together they formed Otogakure's 5 Diva, a group that's exclusively composed by Kunoichi, out of the regular army and only reporting to Orochimaru himself. Kin and Tayuya were childhood friends, growing up together in the village of Yugakure before they were recruited by the Snake. The other 3 were members of the Fuma clan, an isolated group of ninja from Rice Country that chose to follow Orochimaru upon the mysterious death of their leader. Being all orphans, they understood each other quite well, becoming quite famous over the years for their flawless teamwork. As in every organization, they needed a leader to report to their master, so Tayuya was chosen. She was selected for that spot despite not being the strongest. Orochimaru never explained why, not that anyone would question him. Their squad was highly respected, second only to one other team from Oto, the Sound 4, a group exclusively composed by the strongest shinobi of their country that inspired fear among all their enemies and even allies for their ruthlessness and lack of restraint. Even though the Diva weren't as powerful as the Sound 4, they had something the other squad didn't: strategy. Indeed, the 5 of them were all skilled strategists, with Tayuya being the brightest. All their attacks were calculated in order to obtain the best results, always taking into account the strength and weakness from each member of their team. There was something else that made them famous among their peers: their choice of weapon. Each and every one of them chose to fight using sounds, something to show their allegiance to the village of Otogakure. Tayuya was using a flute, Kin used bells, Kotoheim had a harp, Sasami used her own voice, and Kajiro used some kind of strange transformation of her body to form wings and then used their vibrations. They all used sounds as weapons against their enemies, with genjutsu being their primary choice of attack, not that they didn't train themselves in the other ninja arts over the years. Having grown up in a lawless zone had naturally been difficult for those women. They had to fight every step of the way, covering each other's backs, in order to avoid the other men and their less than honorable intentions. It didn't help that they were all beautiful women, something that was more a curse than a blessing in the shinobi world. Nevertheless, Orochimaru never expressed any interest in them that way. Strangely enough, he preferred the company of the other all-boy squad. Okay, we're close enough from our destination now. Take out your secondary gears, we will act like civilians for the rest of the trip, Tayuya announced as the port town came into view before them. This is such a drag, why not use henge, Tayuya-chan? Kin asked as she started to take out her civilian clothes. Let's just assume that someone among them could detect the use of chakra that it would take for all of us to use that jutsu. Tayuya replied as she used a small genjutsu to cover up their location while the 5 of them were undressing. In the end, they all dressed as the locals and then suppressed their chakra levels to the bare minimum for their upcoming mission. Tayuya dispelled her genjutsu, and their group departed again, choosing to walk for the rest of the trip since a bunch of civilian women tree jumping would most definitely get them unwanted attention. The Diva arrived at their destination 30 minutes later, in the huge village at the extreme north of Hot Spring Country that also served as a port. Alright, let's spread out. Report back to me in 2 hours, orders are to observe for now. Try to not attract any unnecessary attention, and should you encounter our target, do not engage, we aren't here to fight. The redhead told her group as they all went in different directions to look for the masked blonde man. With Naruto. On the other side of the town, Naruto just exited the inn where he and the girls had rented rooms for the night. They had already gone to sleep. It had been a long time since the last time they had a bed that was not relentlessly shaken by the ship's movements. Consequently, Naruto was left alone. Still, he couldn't wait to explore the region and find out more about the last members of his clan. 3 people, that was everything he knew about those Uzumaki. That was not much, but it certainly wasn't nothing either. Another clue he had was that Uzumaki usually, if not always, had red hair, a paradox when looking at him, but he knew where those golden hair of his came from. From what he saw in his travels, red hair were not that common in the elemental nations. He decided to focus his attention on them first. Ever since the Konoha incident, Naruto opted for a small change in his appearance. Gone were the mask and his blonde hair, as he decided to show his face, though he colored his hair in red, picking a natural disguise instead, over the use of henge. The whole world was looking out for a masked man with blonde hair. He figured that way no one would notice him with this new setup. Naruto also decided against showing off his powers. His newly updated profile into the bingo book got him more attention than needed. He would need to keep a low profile if he wanted to approach his Uzumaki comrades without scaring them. Disguised as the perfect random civilian, he started his new mission by visiting the more crowded area of this town. Center of the town. Tayuya was bored out of her mind. The search for the masked man and his crew had been less than entertaining so far. Ever since she went on her own to look out for information about her target, it started to rain, and she decided to get inside a popular restaurant of the area. The place was an even more crowded area than everything she saw until now from this town. The leader of the 5 divas sat at a small table, waiting for someone to take her order. She did not have to wait long before she felt someone behind her, slightly touching her shoulder. The contact seemed a little bit too familiar for her, and once she looked back, she was surprised not to see some waitress as she expected, but a man seemingly drunk that gazed at her with a perverted look in his eyes. "Hello there, miss, how about a drink with me and my buddies over there?" he said loudly, while looking at her breasts instead of her face. There was indeed a bunch of equally drunk men seating behind them, with some of them already harassing other tables or waitresses. Tayuya cursed her luck at being assigned this mission. She would tear Kabuto a new one as soon as they get home. For now, though, she was in a pinch, for she couldn't risk exposure by attacking that pig and his friends. There was a probability that her target, or someone related to him, was around or even in this bar with her right now, so she could not risk it and decided to remain calm for now. "Who the fuck is that shit stain trying to hit on? He's so lucky I can't use my powers on him right now, or he would be in a world of pain right now," she yelled in her head while looking at the man. "Actually, I'm already waiting for a friend of mine. It shouldn't be long before he arrives," she told the man, trying to keep a neutral tone. Of course, there are men who won't take no for an answer. He was among them. "Look here, miss, who do you think you are to refuse an invitation from me, the Kuro Kitsune?" the man proudly yelled, as everyone around stopped what they were doing to look at him. Naturally, the nickname from the man who killed Yagura and destroyed the Hokage mountain was something that would attract anyone's attention. Among the crowd of curious bystanders was a certain man with red hair whose eyes widened at the mention of said name. "Kuro Kitsune, my ass, there's no way in hell that he's my target. He looks like a pirate wannabe. I guess the men in the back are his crew. This town is really starting to become a dump for the scum of the elemental nations ever since their daimyo signed the treaty with Orochimaru," Tayuya thought. She was about to snap, as the man who pretended to be the Kuro Kitsune still had a hand on her shoulder, when someone suddenly interrupted them from the other side of the bar. "There you are, I've been looking for you for hours," Naruto said as he approached her table and sat in front of her, not paying attention to the man behind. The crowd was stunned at the man who just barged in, unaware of the dangerous man and situation that he was interrupting. "I'm sorry, honey, I was shopping when I realized that I lost track of you," Tayuya quickly replied, trying to play along with her mysterious savior. He looked sober enough, and truth to be told, she found him to be much cuter than the man currently harassing her. "What the hell? Is he trying to save me? I guess it's better than me killing that shit stain, and thus failing my mission," she analyzed. "Is something the matter, sir? Do you need something with me or my wife?" Naruto asked the man as he finally acknowledged him. "Do you know who I am? How dare you interrupt the Kuro?" The drunk never had the chance to finish his sentence, as Naruto discreetly sent him a focused wave of killing intent. The whole crowd looked on as the harasser suddenly lost control of his bladder and started to wet his pants right there in the middle of the bar. No one knew what to say, as the man turned bright red in anger and embarrassment, with everyone around looking at his soiled pants. He ran out, followed by his men, sending a glare toward Naruto and Tayuya on his way out. Absolute silence reigned for a few seconds before the whole place burst out laughing, not able to contain themselves after witnessing this scene. "That was close. I thought for a moment that he was going to kill me. I hope I'm not a bother. I saw him harassing you and I couldn't help myself from stepping in. Not that anyone else looked ready to do so," Naruto said, as he saw the other occupants of the bar looking down in guilt. That's fine, really. I don't know what would have happened if you didn't interfere, sir? Tayuya replied with one of her fake smile. Naruto, nice to meet you, miss? Naruto gave her his name and expected her to do the same. It was a long shot, but she was the first redhead he met ever since they arrived. It never hurt to ask. Naruto knew he would have to test her nevertheless, even if her name wasn't Uzumaki, just to be sure. He then held out his hand for her to shake it while waiting for her name. I'm Yuya, it's nice to meet you too, Naruto-san. The woman replied, as both noticed that neither had given out a family name. She caught his hand and shook it, but winced in surprise as she felt something sting her. Ouch! What was that? Tayuya yelled as she withdrew her hand from Naruto's. Oh damn, I'm so sorry, Yuya-san, this is something I prepared for the other guy and forgot to take it off. Don't worry, it's not poisonous or anything, I didn't have the time to load it. Naruto apologized vigorously, also using his best fake smile as he put away the blood sample he just stole from Tayuya without her ever noticing it. I'm fine, don't worry about it, but what about you? Will you be fine with angering a man like him? He said he was the famous Kuro Kitsune after all. I wouldn't want to have him for an enemy, she asked her savior. The what? He instantly fired back at her, taking his best ignorant look, hoping his acting skills were good enough to fool the beautiful redhead in front of him. You went in without knowing who you were dealing with? Tayuya asked in disbelief. I'm sorry, I am a traveler and I have to confess that I don't know any Kuro Kitsune. Is he a famous samurai or something? Naruto innocently asked again. As soon as Tayuya knew that Naruto wasn't a local, her behavior changed. Damn, I lost my time with this one, he's not from here. He won't know shit about the target, damn, I'm really having a shitty day. Where the hell are Kin and the others? I hope they had a better luck than me, she thought as she took out a bingo book and handed it to Naruto. Here, that's the man, though I doubt he's the real deal if anything written in that profile is true. You are lucky he was not sober or a real warrior, you'd stand no chance, she said as she suddenly stood up and made her way out. On the streets, Naruto took his time exploring the city a bit more, and unfortunately for him, there was no other redhead. That Yuya woman was the only one he found on that day, though he had a sample of her blood, so verifying if she has Uzumaki blood shouldn't be that hard for him. Aside from the sacred scroll of the Uzumaki clan, he had devised new seals that would detect such blood, not as secured as the one Mito and his mother had used on the scroll, but good enough for his current application. He was pulled out of his thoughts when someone called out for him from a dark alley in the outskirt of the city. Hey, you with the red hair! A strangely familiar voice echoed from the dark street. Naruto sighed. Aside from Yuya, he was the only other redhead inside the city, even though his were fake. He naturally deduced that the voice was calling for him, and turned back toward it. He didn't react as a normal civilian man would, running the hell away from the obvious trap. Just about a couple of seconds later, he was surrounded by a dozen thugs, whose leader was the same man who harassed Yuya in the bar earlier. It seems he sobered up alright, and called out a bunch of friends in order to get his revenge against Naruto. Did you think we would forget about that little meeting we had in the bar? I'm going to get some fun with you and then I'll go greet your little wife after that, he said with a smirk on his face, as the men following him stepped closer to Naruto. Well, it's a good thing that we're in a deserted place and the time is late. I guess I'll have that little workout after all, Naruto thought as he sighed and then calmly called out a technique with no hand seals. Uzumaki Ninpo, he announced as he disappeared from his spot for a second, only to reappear again in the exact same spot, holding the ram hand sign. Are you some kind of shinobi? What did you just do? The leader asked, unsure of what had just happened. There's no need for me to answer the question from a dead man, Naruto said as the men around stared at him and then at each other for a second before laughing out loud. You won't bluff your way out of this again, get him. The man never ended his sentence as Naruto released his hand sign. Tsunewatari, Naruto said as a gush of wind erupted from his body and the thugs were violently propelled backward. However, instead of crashing into the walls as one would expect them to after taking on Naruto's apparent wind jutsu, their bodies exploded in the air in a shower of blood and limbs. Only after the technique was used that the secret was revealed, as blood was dripping from all over the street, from the numerous ninja wires that Naruto had installed before releasing his jutsu. The only evidence of those wires being there was the dripping blood of their victims. Satisfied with his work, the now blonde Naruto exited the alley and made his way back toward the inn where the girls were waiting for him. He never noticed the 5 shadows that were looking down on him from a building not far from the scene. What the heck? Did he just say Uzumaki? How is that possible? Could it be? Were the thoughts of a certain redhead as she looked at the unsuspecting retreating form of her mysterious savior. Flashback, unknown island, 15 years ago. Naruto suddenly woke up, as he felt something very cold touching his feet. Everything around was bright, and he felt lightheaded, after standing up too quickly. Looking around, he was stunned to see that he was all alone, and apparently on a beach. The cold sensation he felt earlier on his feet was the water from the sea, and judging from its low temperature and the current position of the sun, it was still quite early in the morning. The boy was confused now. The last thing he remembered was the ship that he and Gigi took for the special mission the old man had to do. He went to sleep, and the next thing he knows he's here, on this beach all by himself. His young mind couldn't understand what was going on, so he did what a lost boy would do in his shoes. He started to run frantically all around the beach, shouting Gigi, and looking around to see if he could locate his surrogate grandfather. The boy ran around like this for hours, his abnormally high stamina allowing him to do so. When he finally spent all of his remaining energy, he fell to his knees with tears in his eyes. He completely ignored the burning sensation on his naked feet from running non-stop on the now burning sand of the beach. In his chase, he never noticed that he ran in a circle, all around a medium-sized island. That's when he realized something. Did his Gigi abandon him too? He couldn't help but wonder. It was too nice to be true. The old man never had the time to stick with him, and suddenly, he asked him if he wanted to come on a vacation trip with him. Naruto started to doubt. Maybe this was his fault too. He always played pranks and never listened to the old man. Perhaps it was a punishment for him. The 6-year-old boy continued to despair on his current situation when something shiny caught his attention. He immediately recognized the item. Growing up in a shinobi village, he knew what that small knife was, a kunai. It was like a sign from the gods themselves, and, in his current emotional state, some dangerous thoughts started to wander in his young and fragile mind. It would be so easy to end his suffering. He was not stupid. He knew about life and death. Living in one of the poorest sections of the village, he had already come across crime scenes quite often in the past. A particular memory flashed in his mind, about a sad-looking man plunging a kunai in his own heart to never wake up again after that. The blonde made up his mind and slowly raised the kunai in front of him, pointing its blade toward his chest, as he had seen the man do back in the village. He prepared his move, one last thought in his head about his Gigi, then closed his eyes and moved his hands. "Stop right there!" a strong voice yelled, making him freeze in his position and drop the kunai on the ground. Turning around, he saw no one and wondered who just called out to him. That's when a searing pain erupted in his head and he blacked out shortly after that. Naruto's mindscape. The blonde opened his eyes and found himself in a strange-looking place yet again. He was in a dark room that looked like a sewer to him. Of course he knew what a sewer would look like, having been thrown in one by a drunk villager in the past or hiding in there when he needed an emergency exit. Naruto never questioned the fact that one second he was on a deserted beach, and the next moment he finds himself in this place. Curiosity and his childish naivety overcame any sense of logic his young mind could possibly have at this time, and he decided to move on without looking back. Contrary to the sewer in Konoha, this place was not much of a maze since there was only one way to go. He followed the path, straight ahead to find himself in a much larger room, with a gigantic cage in the center. There was a sign on the cage's lock. Unfortunately for him though, Naruto didn't know how to read, so the meaning of the writing on it was lost to him. So we finally meet Naruto. The same loud voice that stopped him earlier echoed throughout the room. Naruto couldn't determine its origin, but he could only guess that it was coming from the dark space inside the cage. Who is it?" the boy asked fearfully while looking inside the cage. When his eyes finally got used to the darkness around, what he saw inside the cage stunned him even more than the beach from earlier. In front of him stood a giant fox with 9 tails flowing behind its back. "Now that you see me, do you have any idea of whom you are talking to?" the creature asked him, crouching down and bringing its face close to the ground to appear right in front of the cage's lock. "Kyubi, but I thought the Yondaime killed you. Every year the villagers celebrate your death. I'm sure of this since it's the same day as my birthday," Naruto replied, not sure in what to believe any longer. "Yeah, well, I'm not so easily killed, boy. The Hokage did the next best thing he could. He sealed me." "Do you know where?" the fox asked him. "And me?" Naruto said, too shocked to say anything else. Everything fell into place with this piece of information. The hate and everything else was a result of that fateful day 6 years ago, when the Yondaime sealed the most powerful demon to have ever walked the earth in his gut. "That's right, monkey. Because of that our fates are now linked. If you die, I die. Now, what on earth were you trying to pull earlier with that kunai? Do you know how much I had to spare in order to save our lives when you were thrown into the sea?" the fox yelled at him, angered by his previous actions. "I am sorry, please don't be mad at me. I thought I was all alone again. I thought Gigi left me to die because I did something wrong. Naruto replied, tears in his eyes. The next thing he did surprised the fox greatly, as the little blonde leaped forward and tried to hug its face. Seeing this, the creature froze for a moment. Never in its long captive life had a host been so close and careless. Of course, Naruto was still young and didn't realize how dangerous the QB could be. Seeing the weeping boy, the creature sighed, knowing it would be difficult to proceed with the blonde in this state. Naruto was surprised and had to take a few steps back, out of the cage, when the body of the fox in front of him started to glow in a bright red light. The boy was blinded for a few seconds before the light disappeared. What he saw then was even more surprising than everything that had led to this moment, for in front of him stood a woman instead of the giant fox. "There, it should be easier to speak with you with this form," the woman said. She had long red straight hair that reached her waists. Her eyes were also bright red, with a slit right in the middle. The only physical differences between her and a normal human woman were the 2 fox ears she had and the 9 tails that came out behind her. The only clothing she had was a black kimono. It barely covered her body, but Naruto was both too young and distracted to notice such things. "QB, is that you? How is this possible? I thought you were a demon fox," Naruto stuttered out as he continued to stare. "No, I'm Santa Claus," replied the woman with a sigh. Her eyebrows twitched when she saw the confusion in his eyes, most likely not getting her reference. "Santa what?" the boy asked, oblivious to the